Welcome to my channel. I skip all R18 content to follow YouTube's guidelines and avoid getting a strike. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Chapter 61, Chapter 60, Battle of Two Minds. Third person, POV. A stunned look on his face. Magneto couldn't believe he had just been punched in the face. The same for his acolytes. Yet before anyone had time to process what had just happened, Victor grabbed Magneto's cape, spun him around once, and tossed him through the air, away from his people. Victor flying after him, since he wanted some one-on-one time with the master of magnetism. No, Lord Magneto, Fabian shouted, getting a slightly deranged look on his face, his gaze directed at the Primarchs and Spartans, all of whom Exodus decided to his with a telepathic blast. But before he had to defend himself from one. What? Exodus thought, not expecting to be hit with such an attack. But more than that, he could sense it was on the same level of power as his own Chinook abilities. No, that shouldn't be possible, Exodus thought, since he could count on his hands the number of Chinooks powerful enough in the world to engage him in combat, and as far as he knew none of them were present, meaning there was a new player on his field. But before Exodus had any more time to think on the matter, he suddenly found himself flying through the air, a fist in his stomach, the fist belonging to Thaddeus, who was wearing an excited expression on his face, since he found that Brainiac, and his Emperor's, intelligence was correct. Magneto did have a Chinook on his level among his group, and with that being the case, Victor had assigned Thaddeus to take him on, and take him down. A job he found himself getting ready to enjoy, since he finally had an opponent on his level he could go all out against. Finally, a worthy opponent, Thaddeus thought excitedly. Meanwhile, Exodus had a look of realization on his face. So, you are the Chinook who attacked me? That's right, Thaddeus replied. I am known as Thaddeus, a Primarch who serves the one and only Emperor Victor Von Doom, he explained. Now I have been instructed to give you one last chance to surrender by my lord. Please don't. I will not yield, Exodus spoke, putting an angry expression on his face, which only made Thaddeus grin even wider. Music to my ears, he replied. Thus the battle of the Chinooks was on. As Thaddeus took Exodus somewhere where the two could really let loose, Magneto's remaining followers now focused all their attention on the remaining Primarchs and the Spartans standing with them. You no good animals, Fabian shouted. You dare to stand against us? Do dare to stand against the power of Ma'adash? We do, Zid spoke, interrupting Fabian. Now then, all of you be silent and listen. Our Emperor instructed us to give you one more chance to stand down and surrender. If you do, your lives will remain intact. But do not, and we will end them without mercy. Make your choice, he said. Hearing this, Fabian's entire face turned red with rage. Fucking cretin, he spat. Fabian then raised his arms in the direction of Zid, getting ready to unleash his powers. Ack. But before he could, Zid had crossed the distance between in an instant and put his right arm straight through Fabian's chest where his heart was located. His arm now jutting through outward the back of Fabian, Zid holding the man's heart in his right hand. Looks like you have made your choice, Zid said. He then squeezed his right hand and crushed Fabian's heart like it was nothing. Zid then pulled his arm from Cortez's chest, allowing his corpse to hit the ground. The moment it did, Zid turned his gaze in the direction of the rest of Magneto's remaining followers. I give up. Only for Amelia to shout out here surrender the moment he did, since she didn't want to die, because the moment she saw Fabian's heart crushed, her life flashed before her eyes. Me too. I'll surrender, don't kill me. Me as well. After Amelia spoke up, one by one the rest of Magneto's followers surrendered. A wise choice, all of you, Zid replied. Spartans, he exclaimed. Yes, Primarch Zid, the Spartans shouted in unison. They then moved towards Magneto's forces and began placing power-dampening cuffs on all of them, an invention Victor created some time ago for situations exactly like the one today. In no time at all, the remainder of Magneto's forces had been secured. All right, you all know the rest of the plan, Zid spoke. Move it, he said. Yes, Primarch Zid, the Spartans replied in unison. They then got ready to escort the prisoners to a secure location, Ivy and Thrag accompanying to make sure no one got any funny ideas, while Zid and Karma were remaining behind to aid Thaddeus and Doom should they need it. But both Primarchs knew their fellow leader, and especially their Emperor, would not. Asterisk boom, 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 asterisk. Crashing noises filled the air as Thaddeus and Exodus clashed in it, matching each other blow for blow, both doing so while using telekinesis to maintain flight, and both employing tactile telekinesis to increase their already augmented strength. As the two Chinooks clashed their fists together again, Exodus lashed out with a kick from his left foot. Immediately floating backwards, Thaddeus dodged it. He then quickly threw up a telekinetic barrier as Thaddeus launched a powerful telekinetic blast in his direction, the attack hitting Thaddeus' shield, which easily held. Seeing this, Exodus increased the power behind his blast. He also took hold of several large rocks on the ground and brought them up into the air, morphing them into giant spears, which he then sent flying straight at Thaddeus, each of the rock spears slamming into his shield, which combined with the telekinetic blast was finally enough to cause it to shatter. But before Thaddeus could take any damage, to moved and dodged Exodus' attack. He then fired off beams of powerful telekinetic energy from his eyes at Exodus, his attack scoring a direct hit on his fellow Chinook. A/N, the eye beam thing is real. Exodus can do it in the comics. Look it up on the Marvel Wiki if you don't believe me. And since Primarch Thaddeus has the same powers as Exodus on the same level, he can do it too. Though the attack of course didn't do any damage. It simply stunned Exodus for a moment. But that was all Thaddeus needed to launch a telepathic assault on Exodus' mind. Thaddeus managed to smash through several of Exodus' mental barriers before the centuries-old Chinook regained his bearings and went on a counterattack. You're 100 years too young to best me in the battle of the minds, you test tube creation. Exodus spat, having managed to glimpse some of Thaddeus' thoughts when he entered his mind. Tough talk coming from a guy who is basically the same as me, Thaddeus replied. He too having been able to glimpse slightly in Exodus' minds, the same way his opponent did to him. Which is how Thaddeus learned Exodus has been enhanced centuries ago. But not by who. That knowledge was apparently buried deeper in his mind. You know not of what you speak. Exodus roared after Thaddeus spoke. He then upped his power, and Thaddeus responded in kind. The two entering a raging telepathic battle, which eventually took their minds/spirits to a place that was simply a void of colors. To think you would be powerful enough to force me onto the astral plane. Exodus spoke. I'll commend you for that. But this is where our battle ends. You took the words right out of my mouth. Thaddeus replied. Right after he did, two giant ethereal hands materialized on either side of him and Theen quickly slammed together, sandwiching Thaddeus between them. But a second after this happened, both of the ethereal hands were forced back by a powerful barrier surrounding Thaddeus. After this happened, Thaddeus conjured forth several giant wolves, which he sent to attack Exodus. His opponent not moving an inch as the wolves got closer and closer to him, eventually reaching him, where they were then crushed in the palm of a hand, belonging to a giant Exodus, who then reached out and tried to grab hold of Thaddeus, only for his hand to be hit with a powerful telekinetic blast. Just give up, boy, Exodus spoke, finally capturing Thaddeus using his other hand. You are out of your league. Plus, even if you are victorious against me, you cannot possibly hope to stand against my creator, for he is eternal, he said, a being who truly embodies the word apocalypse. So give up. Never. Thaddeus replied. So be it then. Exodus replied. He then squeezed his hand around Thaddeus, crushing him out of existence on the astral plane. I see. So is that all you've got? Or so Exodus thought, until he heard Thaddeus' voice coming from behind him. When he did, he turned around. In doing so, he was met with a giant figure even larger than himself. But it wasn't of Thaddeus. No, it was of his creator and emperor, Dr. Doom. I'll admit you've been a good challenge, but it's time to put an end to this. Thaddeus' voice spoke from the Dr. Doom construct. Then before Exodus could even make another move, he found himself encompassed by the hands of Doom and being crushed. No, this is impossible, Exodus cried, trying and failing to free himself. No, it is possible, Thaddeus replied. And on another note, even if what you say about your creator is true, I am not worried in the slightest. For I stand with a man and serve even greater, my emperor, Victor von Doom, who even this so-called apocalypse is not ready for. He spoke. Thaddeus then finished crushing Exodus, destroying him on the astral plane, which in turn basically destroyed his mind. When this was done, Thaddeus returned to his actual body. Exodus releasing horrid screams as he did, which Thaddeus ignored as he simply smashed his way past any of Exodus' remaining mental defenses and absorbed all of the man's knowledge. Finding out Exodus wasn't exaggerating. His creator truly was the apocalypse. Still, Apocalypse had never faced one such as Dr. Doom. After taking all the information he found relevant, Thaddeus pulled himself out of what was left of Exodus' head. He then took hold of the man with his telekinesis, since his body has gone limp, and started flying back towards his comrades. Having thoroughly enjoyed his battle. Chapter 62, Chapter 61, Doom vs Magneto. Third person, POV. Stopping himself in the air, Magneto aimed a glare towards Victor, who stopped right along with him. You dare to face me alone knowing who I am, Metal Man? Magneto asked. Yes, I dare, Victor replied. Then you are a fool, Magneto said. He then raised his left hand in Victor's direction and began using his powers to pull his armor apart. At least he tried to, until Magneto realized his powers weren't affecting Victor's armor in the slightest. What? Impossible, Magneto exclaimed. Oh, is someone having a little performance anxiety? Doom asked, watching as Magneto put a stupefied expression on his face as he realized his powers couldn't do anything to his armor. But that's to be expected, since Victor had prepared his armor for this exact situation a while ago. He had made it so that whenever his armor was going to be affected by any sort of magnetic field, it would generate a magnetic field along the same lines of force and frequency, trying to affect his armor. Thus, just like with two magnets who had their same poles facing each other, the magnetic field generated by his armor would repel the magnetic field trying to affect it, making Victor immune to magnokinetic abilities. Don't worry. I hear it's very common in men of a certain age, Victor spoke, which only infuriated Magneto even further. So I cannot rip your armor off of you. No matter. I can still make it your coac, Magneto suddenly shouted, as Victor closed the distance between them and delivered a punch to his chest, sending him flying into the ground. Not caring one bit that he interrupted Magneto's little monologue, since Victor is not some sort of shounen manga or anime protagonist who is going to let his enemy finishing speaking before attacking them. No, his thinking is in line with number 17's from Dragon Ball Super, attacking his opponents no matter what they are doing, especially if they are in the middle of powering up or some shit like that. That's why he loved 17 during the Tournament of Power arc. Ack! Magneto shouted, as he flew up from the ground and back into the air. A force field around his body. Once he raised both his hands on Victor's direction and fired off magnetic rays at him, which Victor easily blocked by summoning his own force field. After he summoned 2 small portals near his fists, their openings near Magneto's stomach. Without hesitation, Victor punched through the portals near his hands, nailing Magneto in his stomach. Repeatedly. So much so it made him drop his force field. When this happened, Victor dropped his own force field and then quickly closed the distance to Magneto. After he delivered a left uppercut to the man's chin, sending his head flying upward, the rest of his body following right along. Though that only happened for a few seconds before Magneto stopped his ascent, spitting up a small amount of blood from his mouth after he did. So, are you ready to give up now? Victor asked, floating up to meet Magneto at eye level, his hands behind his back like Morpheus from the Matrix. As you can see, despite your power you cannot hope to defeat me. So give up and come along peacefully. That way you can even meet your fellow EVOs on good terms. Victor spoke. Never? I'll never surrender to you, Magneto angrily replied. And what do you mean by EVOs? He asked. I mean people like you and me. Those who have superhuman abilities, either through natural development or through various other methods, like scientific experiments. Victor replied. Evolved humans, a term I think fits those like us far better than the horrid term mutant. For when I hear that word I can only imagine some grotesque monster. Don't you agree? Don't think you can distract me, Magneto spoke. He then fired off some concentrated and faded rays at Victor, leading the man to sigh and raise his force field to defend himself. I see you want to do this the hard way then. So be it, Victor said. He then created a large magic portal in front of him, which opened up behind Magneto. Once the portal was opened up, Victor quickly removed Magneto's helmet before locking the man into a sleep choke hold, as well as begin to telepathically assault his mind. No, stop, Magneto shouted. He also struggled, but it was no use. Victor had him under his complete mercy, which in no time at all had Magneto out cold. Once Victor took hold of the man using his telekinesis, came through his magic portal beside him, and closed it. Victor then caught Magneto's famous helmet with his telekinesis and brought it up to his hands, where he took hold of it. After he started heading back to regroup with his people, slightly disappointed that was all the Master of Magnetism had to offer him in the way of a battle, leaving Victor to wonder when he would get an opponent that could truly challenge him. Chapter 63, New Chapter and Poll. Chapter 64, Chapter 62, You Are the Father. Third person, POV. NHN. Magneto softly moaned, slowly but surely opening his eyes. After he immediately remembered what had happened to him, how he got knocked out and taken down by Victor. Upon recalling this, he began taking in his surroundings. When he found himself lying on a cot, inside of a cell, a collar secured around his neck. No, Magneto whispered, upon realizing his situation, that of a prisoner. But before he could dwell on those thoughts, he heard a familiar voice speak to him. Well, looks like you're finally awake. Turning his head in the direction of the voice, Magneto noticed Victor seated in a chair right in front of him, the two of them separated by a clear wall. Seeing Victor before him, Magneto found his anger bubbling to the surface. So he then began calling upon his powers, only to find that he couldn't. Magneto couldn't feel his powers at all, making the man put a surprised, and at the same time horrified, look on his face. Let me guess, you tried to access your powers and found that you couldn't. Victor mused. Magneto said nothing in response, but the look on his face told Victor all he needed to know. I thought so, Victor said. Well, that's to be expected, given the collar around your neck is a power dampening one. So no powers for you? He explained. A dampening field is also being generated continuously inside of your cell as well. So don't get any ideas about removing your collar and planning some great escape. Not that you could remove anyway. Consider all the security measures installed within it. He spoke. I see, Magneto replied. Yes, Victor said. Now then, with the most important things out of the way for now, let's you and I have a friendly chat. A chat? Don't patronize me, Magneto spat. If you're going to kill me, just hurry up and do it. Hearing Magneto's words, Victor couldn't help but snort. Magneto raising a brow at his actions. Something you find amusing? He asked. Yes, what you just said, Victor replied. He then put a devilish smile on his face. For you see, Max, if I had wanted to kill you I could have done so already without any trouble, he explained. Magneto finding himself feeling fear for the first time in a long time. Not only due to the smile Victor is currently wearing on his face, but also because he used his first real name. A name Magneto has closely guarded ever since his days in the camps of the Nazis as a young boy. A name not even those closer to him knew. Yet Victor did know it, scaring him. You, how do you know that name? Magneto asked. Simply Max. I took it from inside your head, Victor replied, lightly moving to tap the left side of his head with his left finger, indicating to Magneto he has probed his mind while he was unconscious, where Victor managed to learn many things about the Master of Magnetism, including the fact Sinister was the one who tortured and experimented on during his time in the concentration camps. That, plus the knowledge Thaddeus had shared with him and the other Primarchs that he retrieved from Exodus Mind, told Victor not only Sinister but Apocalypse were their comic book versions in this reality, which he was happy to know. especially in the case of Apocalypse. Sinister was nothing special, a minor nuisance. But Apocalypse was a different story. That's why Victor had already begun his plans for dealing with the man when he tested his ugly head, ones that would put him on the ground, permanently. I see, Max replied. So is that the reason I am in this cell? You wish to make me relieve the suffering and torment I experienced as a boy for your own amusement. Again, no, Victor replied. You are in this cell as a punishment for your actions against my nation, and a precaution to make sure you do not cause any more trouble. Though depending on how you behave you might not be in there for long. What do you mean? Max asked. Before I answer that, allow me to give you a glimpse of the Latveria my people and I have worked to create. Victor said. He then snapped his fingers. When he did, 2 Doombots came to stand on either side of him, while the clear wall separating the two of them moved up into the air until it was entirely gone. After it was, Victor stood to his feet. Come Max, allow me to show you the world as I see it, he said. Hearing this, Magneto was tempted to be stubborn and remain in his cell, but knew this was too good an opportunity to pass up, especially if he could gain valuable intelligence against Victor and Latveria, not to mention on the whereabouts of his followers. So with that in mind, Max stood up and walked to Victor's side. Thank you, Victor replied. Now then, let's go, he spoke. Victor then started walking, Max and the 2 Doombots, following right behind him. The small group moved through some twists and turns until they arrived on a launch pad, where a hovercar was waiting for them, Victor's personal one, which he headed straight for as soon as they arrived, the rest of his group following behind him. Reaching the hovercar, Victor and Max climbed in. Once they did, and were secure, Victor started up the craft and put it on autopilot, having plotted a course into it that would take them on a tour of Doomstadt itself. As the vehicle maneuvered through the air, the Doombots flying behind it, Max couldn't help but marvel at the things he saw, especially the fact mutants and ordinary humans were mingling and getting along without any animosity. This is, Magneto mused. He then turned to look at Victor. This is really your country? It is, Victor replied. A place where EVOs and humans coexist peacefully, he explained. And so much more. But I'll save that for later. EVO, you used that term before, Magneto realized, remembering when Victor used it during their earlier fight. Yes, a term I came up with, and one I hope that one day the entire world can employ, erasing words such as mutant, like I stated earlier during our first meeting, since I truly find that term, and others like it, deplorable, because people like you are still human, Max. You just happen to have extraordinary abilities due to the genetic lottery, which is certainly not something you should be ostracized for. Victor spoke. You know, King Doom, when you speak like that you remind me of my oldest and dearest friend, Magneto said, who I'm sure would love to visit your country, since it's a place both he and I have always dreamed of creating. Though I wonder how the rest of the world will react to the status of Latveria. They'll become just like it, or they shall know the wrath of Doom. Victor spoke plainly, sporting the same devilish smile on his face from earlier. You mean to go to war with the world? Max asked. If it comes to that, yes, Victor answered immediately, though I'm hoping I don't have to. But with all the idiots and bigots in positions of power across the globe, that scenario is not likely to occur. Though if it does, I'll be very happy, since that means the world can peacefully transition into one united front under my rule without too much bloodshed. You seek to rule the world? Magneto asked. No, I seek to save it. But that can only be done if I unite it and take command of it, Victor replied. Because as you well know, Max, humanity is cruel, vicious, and selfish. They reject things they don't understand without a second thought. They commit the greatest atrocities against each other, based on nothing more than skin color or ethnic background. Well, I seek to end all that, not only for the world itself, but for the people who call it home, whether they are an EVO like you or me or not. Big words, but can you truly follow through on them? Max asked, only for Victor to give him a deadpan look in response. I think my actions earlier against you and your people should answer that question you just asked me. I suppose it does, Max admitted. Anyway, about my people. They are all alive and well and be treated humanely just as you are, save for 2, Fabian Cortez and Exodus, who are dead. Why? Magneto asked. They were both given several warnings to stand down and did not need them. So my people acted in accordance with my orders and put them down, Victor replied. Since, as I told you earlier, you try to invade my country and you will suffer consequences, he said. They simply got what they brought upon themselves. Yes, you kept me alive, Max retorted. Because you are different from those 2, Max, Victor replied. Unlike them, you actually care about the rights and well-being of EVOs, though your methods leaving something to be desired. But given what you endured in your youth and since then, I don't blame you. However, I am hoping you will stop all that, and come and work with me, to bring about the world and future I speak of. You wish for me to work with you? Max asked. Yes, Victor replied, especially since he wanted Magneto to stand by his side one day, for he was a person Victor admired a lot in his previous life, a man who saw the truth of things and wasn't afraid to do something about it, even if it caused his hands to run red with the blood of his enemies. I think we could do great things together. Plus, it would make your children happy. Hearing this, Magneto got a shocked expression on his face. Children? No, I have no children. You're lying. I'm not, Victor replied. He then pulled up a holographic screen and directed Magneto's attention to it, which displayed images of Wanda, Pietro, and Lorna. along with a picture of Magneto, and the children's mothers Magda and Susanna. Not to mention a DNA match confirming Magneto was the father of all three of them, a thing Victor made sure to do as soon as he took Magneto into custody. As you can see from the information displayed, you are a familial paternal match to the twins Pietro and Wanda Maximoff, and their younger half-sister Lorna Dane. Victor explained. So Magneto, you are the father, he exclaimed. Magneto getting a Homer Simpson look on his face at the revelation he had 3 children. Seeing this, Victor took out his phone and snapped a quick picture. He then slipped it back into his pocket. As he did, Magneto finally came out of his stupor. These are my children, he asked. Do you still not believe me? Victor asked. No, I do, Max replied. The girls. Both of them have my mother's eyes, and the boy looks exactly like I did in my youth, he explained. I just can't believe it. Well, it's the truth, my friend, Victor replied. Tell me, are they doing well? Magneto asked. They are, Victor replied. In fact, all 3 of them are residents of Latveria. Truly, truly, Victor replied. Upon hearing this, Magneto couldn't help but smile. He then asked a question that suddenly came to his mind. Can I meet them? Actually, you're about to, Victor said. Just as he did, the hovercar landed and the top opened up. Having landed on the same launch pad they took off from when they began their tour of Doomstot. But this time Lorna, Wanda, and Pietro were standing on it, waiting for them. Victor having arranged this meeting the moment he confirmed Magneto was the biological father of all 3 of them, not only to give the children the father they had been longing to meet, but also to strengthen Magneto's loyalty to Latveria overall. Seeing his children, Magneto was shocked, but that shock was quickly replaced by fear. Still, he fought through it and got out of the hovercar to walk over to his kids. Hello there, Magneto said. Hello, Wanda said. What's up? Pietro replied. Hi, Lorna spoke. So, you are our father? Yes, it seems I am, Magneto said, putting a soft smile on his face. Then before he knew it, he even found himself crying a little bit. As this happened, Victor simply stayed quiet and watched on, allowing the first meeting between a father and his children to go on without any interruption. Chapter 65, Chapter 63, Star Wars and Fishman. Victor, POV. I continued to let Magneto have a few more uninterrupted minutes with his children, before I stepped in and interrupted them, but only to escort them to a room inside the building, where they could sit down and relax as they got to know each other a bit more. Once I did this, I took my leave, not worried in the slightest Magneto would attempt any sort of escape, especially since I had left Jessica to supervise the entire meeting. Plus, given the security I have installed throughout my country, if Magneto even so much as blinks the wrong way, his ass will be taken down faster than the booty warrior gets the booty he wants. But again, I don't think anything along those lines will take place, given the look I saw in old Max's eyes the moment he actually came face to face with his children. It's the same look I'm sure I get when I look at Kristoff, that of a parent admiring their child. So I'm sure old Buckethead will be a good little boy. I mean, he better if he wants to keep getting quality time with his kids, since if he takes one wrong turn, I will cut off all contact between the 4 of them. For I will not allow Max to infect those 3 with his highly extremist views, and have them turn out anything like they did in canon in the comics. Namely, because they are citizens of my country, and no one shall lead astray those under Doom's protection, lest they wish to forfeit their life. Moving on. Having concluded my only major meeting for the day, I returned home. I then went to see what Kristoff was up to, since with all that's been going on these past few months, I haven't had a chance to spend as much quality time with him as I wanted. I mean, I knew this would happen once I started ramping up my plans, but still, I let those thoughts linger for a moment before I dismissed them. Once I did, I had Brainiac inform me of Kristoff's location, which was one of the training fields surrounding the castle. Heading to his location, I arrived in no time, only to find quite the sight. Kristoff sparring against 3 Doombots using his Force Lance, dressed in an exact copy of Revan's armor from Star Wars. Image here. Seeing this, I used my technopathy to contact Brainiac. Brainiac, please tell I am not imagining things right now. Tell me my son is currently wearing a replica of Revan's armor from Star Wars. I said. You're not imagining things, boss. That is Kristoff wearing an exact replica of Revan's armor, one which he made all by himself at that. Brainiac replied. I see. Thank you, I replied. I then cut off our connection and continued to silently watch as Chris Roth continued his spar against 3 Doombots, just like his friends off to the side, which included Laura, Riri, and Julio, who have become some of Kristoff's closest friends ever since they arrived in Latveria. Pietro and Wanda being on that list as well. A few more minutes passed before Kristoff's spar came to an end, with him as the victor. The moment this occurred, the Doombots stepped back and Kristoff removed his helmet, where he then immediately noticed me, putting a smile on his face. Dad. Hey son, I replied, finally walking up to Kristoff and his friends, all of whom greeted me and me them. So, nice armor you got there. And you chose to build Revans of all the ones out there. Looks like someone's been playing Kotar. I spoke. Yeah, Kristoff happily replied. Good boy, I said, giving him a pat on the back. So, wanna tell me the reason you decided to make yourself some Revan armor in the first place? I asked. Since I am very curious. Because I wanted armor like yours, father, Kristoff revealed. It's also because he wanted to impress you, Mr. Victor. Laura bluntly spoke. Laura, Kristoff exclaimed. getting a hint of red on his cheeks in embarrassment. What? What is the matter? Laura asked, tightening her head slightly. Did I not understand social cues again? If so, my apologies, she said, which caused both Riri and Julio to burst out into laughter. Even I stifled a chuckle, despite the fact Laura not understanding social norms is currently normal for her, given how she grew up until coming to Latveria. Of course she's in therapy to help her develop it, and interacting with others her own age definitely helps. But if that just now was any indication, she still has a long way to go, though I'm sure she'll get there someday. Soon the laughter died down. Well, I got. Anyway, have fun all of you, I said. We will, father, Kristoff replied. In fact, I'm just about to take everyone to watch this new anime I found called Fate/Stay Night. Oh, that's a good one, I replied, proud that my son is becoming a man of culture right before my very eyes, since I didn't even tell me about Fate/Stay and the Nasuverse yet. He discovered it all on his own, though that does make me a bit worried, seeing as how Kristoff has developed a habit of turning things in fiction into reality, and given how the Nasuverse is, I just hope I don't see him trying to recreate any noble phantasms. At least, not until he's a bit older. I made a mental note to make sure Brainiac was on the lookout for that. Then once I did, I finally took my leave, not wanting to interrupt Kristoff times with his friends. After I did, I went to my personal laboratory facility, though before I could even sit down, Brainiac spoke to me. My Emperor, I have news I must share with you, he said. And why did you not do so earlier? I asked him. The setting you were in was not optimal, Brainiac replied. Translation: the information Brainiac had to share with me was not something just anybody could hear, telling me it was important. Understood. Now then, what is the information you wish to share with me? I spoke. When I did, Brainiac shared the information with me, which made me smile. Once I did, I began making a plan surrounding the information Brainiac just shared with me, since it would lead me to a location I had been searching for some time. Atlantis. Unnamed Island, Atlantic Ocean. May 14, 2008. In my armor, I stood on the beach of the island whose location Brainiac had provided to me a few days ago, Thrag and Katma standing on either side of me, dressed in their combat armors, while a contingent of Spartan warriors, outfitted in water-capable combat armor, stood behind us. All of us waiting for the target Brainiac had tracked to this island to appear before us. While he did, I listened to bye 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 in sync inside of my helmet, since I suddenly felt the urge to. A/N, my MC died and reincarnated before Deadpool and Wolverine came out, so he doesn't know the significance of the song. We continued waiting until my armor's sensors picked up several fast-moving objects in the water converging on our group's location. Upon noticing this, I stopped the music and then spoke up. They have arrived, I said. The moment I did, I could sense Thrag, Katma, and the Spartans preparing themselves for combat. Just as they finished, the objects I had been tracking in the water suddenly burst out of it and landed before my group on the beach itself. The objects in question being Marvel Atlanteans, which in my opinion pale in comparison to DC Comics Atlanteans in every way possible. One big fact of note is that Marvel's Atlanteans can't breathe air. That's while all of them currently standing before us are wearing devices filled with water to keep them alive as they faced us on land. All except for one of them, their leader, and one of the few Atlanteans born in the Marvel universe that can breathe air without any troubles and not die after only a few minutes. The Atlantean who I am sure knows the location of Atlantis, and who I hope to work with to bring it under my umbrella. Since the Atlanteans, and by extension their ruler Namor, are exactly like they are depicted in the comics in this reality. So that automatically put the fishboy with wings on my shit list, since I will not allow his lecherous gaze to ever touch Susan. Now, only I am allowed that right. But I'm getting off topic. Back to the individual I am hoping to ally with. I speak of none other than Atuma. Insert image of Atuma here. Surface dwellers, do you know whose island you have stepped foot up on? Atuma cried. That of the mighty Atuma, he exclaimed, gaining a few cheers from his soldiers. Greetings, Atuma. I am Dr. Doom, I said to him, and I know exactly whose island I and my people have set foot upon. If you know, then why? Atuma asked. Because I have come to talk to you and hope to forge an alliance between us, I said. Oh, and what could a surface dweller like you possibly offer the mighty Atuma? He asked. Something I know you have sought for a long time, the rule of Atlantis, I spoke. When I did, all arrogance left Atuma face and he finally put a serious expression on it, which means the negotiations can now truly begin. Excellent. Chapter 66, Chapter 64, it's time to curb stomp, duel. The moment I mentioned Atlantis, and knowing how Atuma has long sought to rule it, the Atlantean warlord and his soldiers currently with him shifted their postures ever so slightly, which most people wouldn't catch. But I am not most people. The same applies to my warriors. So we all knew the moment Atuma and his warriors shifted their positions, it meant they might attack us any second moving forward from this point. Though it matters not. Let them come, for they are no true threat to any of us. Surface dweller, tell me, what do you know of Atlantis? Atuma demanded. First of all, my name is not Surface dweller. It is Doom. And you will address me as such, I told Atuma, not frightened in the slightest by the glare either he, or his soldiers, are sending my way. After all, I've got a Thrag, who was ready to slaughter everyone standing in front of us Viltrumite style, should I make a simple flick of my wrist. Secondly, I know that Atlantis exists, but at the moment not much more than that. since I am certain all records I have pertaining to the underwater city are useless, since they are decades old. I spoke. Though I am not sure. For instance, is its ruler still a man by the name of Namor? I asked. Even though I knew it to be the truth. Though like I just told Atuma, that is likely the only real piece of concrete information I have on the Atlantis at the moment. Since that city, and its people, have done a bang-up job of staying off the radar overall. All the records I've managed to find on the underwater city don't give much details about it. Even the masters of Camartage don't know that much about the place. I even made inquiries with the Ancient One about Atlantis, and even she had little to offer me in that regard. And finding the location of the city itself was proving to be difficult, even with all the resources at my disposal and my meta-knowledge. That's why I shifted a portion of the resources dedicated to locating Atlantis to locating someone who knew of its location, that person being Atuma, who I am now in the middle of trying to make an alliance with, which I hope works out. Since I had already tapped Atuma as a possible candidate for my cabal. After all, I'll need someone to take command of the world's oceans when I bring the planet under my rule, and there's no way I'm trusting that disgusting, arrogant prick Namor with the job. Especially since I loathe the man. Seriously, I found Namor absolutely revolting. That's why I'm making sure his ass gets turned into fish sticks at the soonest possible moment. A/N, yeah, I really don't like Namor's character at all. That's why he's getting bashed a bit. Though it won't happen too often. Do not dare mention that worthless half-breed's name in my presence. Atuma exclaimed, getting a slightly angry expression on his face. So I take it that information is accurate? I asked. Yes, it is. Atuma admitted. Good to know, I replied. Now then, Lord Atuma, would you mind confirming if the other information I have managed to collect in regards to Atlantis is accurate or not? I asked him. To what end? Atuma asked me. So that our two peoples may forge an alliance and conquer it. I retorted. I think I made myself perfectly clear earlier. I said. Surely you jest. Atuma asked me. I do not. I replied. Not when it comes to matter of such importance. Do you surface dwellers honestly think you stand a chance at conquering the jewel of the sea, Atlantis? Atuma asked us. Well, I'm sure we'll do better than someone who has failed to conquer it numerous times. Katma spoke. A smirk on her face. You dare speak to me, to the great Atuma, that way, surface woman. Atuma angrily spoke. Enough, I exclaimed, releasing some of my magical power. This in turn got both everyone to back down. Once I saw this happen, I turned my gaze to Katma. You were out of line. I coldly spoke to her, since I was certainly not happy by what she just did. The moment after I spoke, Katma got on her right knee and bowed her head, an apologetic expression appearing upon her face. Forgive me, my emperor. I meant no disrespect towards you, nor to bring any upon you, she said. I know. Still, do not let it happen again. I told her. Yes, of course, she replied. Katma then stood up. Once she did, I turned my attention back to Atuma. Forgive my subordinate. She spoke out of turn, even though what she said was the truth. I said. Not caring about the angry glare Atuma began sending me. Face facts, Atuma. As you are right now conquering Atlantis and deposing Namor is impossible for you. Besides, even if you did succeed, how much would it cost you? How much of your army would you lose in the process? Then, how long would it be until those still loyal to Namor began to plot to overthrow you? Or better yet, how long would it be until someone just decided to overthrow you just because? You dare speak that way to the mighty Atuma? Atuma shouted at me. Yes, I dare. I easily replied. Because it seems everyone else around you is too scared to tell you the truth. Which is that you're putting yourself in a never-ending cycle. That will either end up with you dead, or mutually assured destruction on both sides. However, if you agree to an alliance with me, that won't happen. Should you accept my offer to work together, I cannot only promise you Atlantis, but rule over all the world's oceans. So long as you agree to the terms of the offer course. Which would be, Atuma asked me, that you abide by the rules I set. When I become the sovereign of this planet we all call home. I spoke. So you would have become your subordinate? Atuma exclaimed. Yes, but also no. I immediately replied. You would not be a subordinate, but a partner in a group that would lead Earth to greater heights. All under your command. Atuma asked me. Naturally. I replied. I mean, I am the one who had the idea in the first place, and founded the group you will be a part of. Should you choose to accept my offer? And if I don't? Atuma asked me. Then me and my people will let you and yours go on your way. You can go back to trying and failing to conquer Atlantis, while me and mine actually one day achieve what you are currently striving for. And when that day comes, and if you choose to stand against us, Atuma, then you will be shown no mercy. For all those that stand against doom shall fall. I spoke, looking Atuma directly in his eyes. You truly believe you surface dwellers can stand against us Atlanteans? Atuma asked me. As my people and I have said many times since this conversation started, yes, we can. I said. Interesting. Atuma mused. Well then, let us see if you can back up these claims you so proudly make. Dr. Doom, I Atuma challenge you to single combat. He proclaimed. Oh, and what do I get if I win? I asked him. Name your price. Atuma spoke. The worst words he could have said. Though I'm not going to tell him that. Okay, if I win I want you to pledge your fealty to me. You will become my body within the oceans of the world, and carry out the will of Dr. Doom within them. I spoke. Fine. Atuma agreed. But should I win, you will remove your designs from Atlantis, and aid me and people in conquering it and never set foot in the city itself, or any territory surrounding it. Deal. I easily replied. So then, where do you want to do this? Land or sea? Which again doesn't matter to me, since just like Kaido from One Piece, whether it's on land, the sea, or the air, I won't lose. Especially if it's one-on-one. At least against someone of Atuma's level. Huh? Never thought I'd be saying that, but here I am. Life is so strange at times. Oh well, I'll give you a fighting chance, Doom. Land. Atuma declared. Works for me, I replied. Once I did both Atuma's soldiers, and my own entourage, gave the two of us a wide berth. After they did, Atuma raised his sword and pointed it in my direction. Your weapon, raise it, he said. When he did, I summoned my personal force lance to me, and then extended both ends outward to put it into staff mode. I then spun it around a few times before placing it against my left shoulder. Is that really the weapon you will go with? Atuma asked me. Yes, it is, I replied. Especially since any and all force lances created are done so with adamantium. So all it will take is one whack from it and someone's head will cave in. Well, normal people. Enough talk, let's get this show on the road. I spoke. Very well, Atuma replied. He then got ready to begin the battle. As he did, I decided to start up bye again in my helmet again. Since the damn song is stuck in my head for some reason and I can't get enough of it today. While the music began, Atuma charged at me, swinging his blade downward. But with my skills and abilities, I easily dodged his attack by moving to the right. After I did, I slammed one end of my force lance into Atuma's gut. My attack sending him backwards, falling to his knees in the process. Seeing this, his soldiers got shocked expressions on their faces. But I really didn't pay them any mind as I closed the distance with Atuma and then smashed him across the face with one end of my force lance. My attack knocking out several of the Atlantean's teeth, and sending some blood flying out of his mouth. It also sent him into the water, where I followed him without any hesitation. My suit configuring itself into underwater mode the instant I was entirely submerged. Seeing Atuma's sinking body, I flew straight toward him using my suit's mini feet thrusters, jamming to my tunes in the process. Upon reaching the Atlantean warlord instantly moved back as he tried to kick him. The man having been playing possum, or in this case I suppose red herring. Nice try, but not good enough. I spoke to Atuma, who only looked at me with bloodshot eyes. Arg. Releasing a scream, he swam at me, slashing. Yet none of his attacks ever landed. I dodged each and every single one, which only made Atuma angrier. Though I get why. I mean, the water is supposed to be an Atlantean's home turf. Yet here I am owning his ass in it. If I was in his shoes, I'd be pissed off as well. Good thing I'm not. Dodging another slash from Atuma, I decided it was time to end this. Especially since my song was almost over. So with that in mind, I quickly moved under Atuma and delivered a punch straight to his gut, sending him flying upward. So much so he broke the surface of the water, me following right behind him as he did. Atuma kept flying higher into the air as he broke through the water, and I followed him, eventually reaching him. Once I did, I used my free hand to grab him, and then I tossed him over my shoulder toward the beach where our duel first began. Atuma landing on it with an audible thud, creating a nice-sized crater. Seeing this, I nodded to myself. I then flew towards Atuma as he tried to stand up, but before he could entirely, I reached him. I then delivered several blows to his body using my force lance, hearing cracking noises in the process, which were definitely Atuma's bones breaking. But he'll be fine. For all, I'm not trying to kill him. I'm just showing him his place, which I continued doing for another minute until I noticed Atuma had blocked out. Upon seeing this, I stopped beating him with my force lance. I then moved over to him and grabbed his neck with my free hand, where I then lifted his battered and broken form high in the air for all to see. As you all can clearly see, I, Dr. Doom, am the clear victor of this duel, I proudly declared. Just as bye ended. A perfect way to complete my victory. For now, Atuma and his forces serve Dr. Doom. Looks like my dream of turning Namor into fish sticks will come sooner than I expected. Chapter 67, Chapter 65, Armor Brothers. After my declaration of victory, I placed Atuma back on the ground. As I did, both his and my forces converged on our position. After they did, the Atlanteans lined up in front of me. Kneel, I commanded them, which is exactly what they did, bringing a smile to my face under my mask. Good. It seems you are an honorable lot. I spoke. I just hope your leader shares your values. He does, Lord Doom. One of the Atlantean soldiers spoke up. We shall see. I spoke. I then snapped my fingers at the Spartans and pointed to Atuma. See to his injuries. Yes, Emperor. They all responded at the same time. The Spartans then began attending to Atuma, quickly tending to any major damage I had done, which is why it only took the big Atlantean only 15 minutes to regain consciousness. After he did, he looked right at me, and I stared right back at him. A silence encompassing the entire area. I was beaten. So as agreed, I will honor the terms of our duel. Atuma spoke. He then kneeled before me. I am now in your service. I am your body in the seas and will carry out your will in them. Dr. Doom. Atuma spoke, and thanks to my telepathy I knew he was telling the truth. That still doesn't mean I'm not going to keep an eye on him. Good to hear, Atuma. It seems just like your people told me you are an honorable man. I spoke. That will get you far with me, but know that if you should ever attempt to turn against me in any way, I will erase your entire existence. Are we clear? We are? Atuma replied, still kneeling. Again, good. I retorted. Now then, heal and rest up, for there is much to be done. Though one thing can be handled right now, Atuma. When I called her name she immediately came to stand before me. Yes, Emperor Doom, she asked. From this moment forward you are now the official liaison between Atuma and his Atlanteans and Latveria, I declared. Both Atuma and Atuma looking at me like I had grown a second head after I spoke. Atuma has already apologized for her earlier folly and I assure you it will not happen again. In addition she is one of my most trusted subordinates, and one of my most powerful generals. There is no doubt in my mind she will be an invaluable asset to you. On the flip side, Atuma, this is a chance for you to learn and watch from an experienced general, as well as a chance for you to prove to me that folly earlier with your words was a one-time incident. I explained. Any questions? I asked. No, my emperor. Atuma replied. I have none. Atuma said. Good. I replied. After I discussed a few more things with Atuma, namely turning the island we were on into a forward base of operations for our future joint Atlantean/Latverian operations in regards to the world's oceans. Once this was completed my group took our leave back to Latveria, having done a good day's work. Latveria, Doomstot. May 18, 2008. A stupid grin on my face I sat in my personal office within Castle Doom, watching the satellite footage we captured of Tony completely wrecking those terrorists in Afghanistan in his Iron Man armor. I guess even with Yinsen alive Tony still decided to suit up, which I am glad about, since it certainly wouldn't be a Marvel universe without an invincible armored Iron Man. Plus now the two of us can be armor brothers. Maybe I can even give him the pushes in the right direction to invent his nanotech armor earlier than he did in the films. Given how many more threats there are in this reality, I mean I could deal with everything myself, but where would be the fun in that? Besides, heroes need some adversity if they are to learn and grow. That's the exact reason I won't be babysitting all the future heroes, since they need to go through certain events to become who they are meant to be, like Tony's kidnapping in Afghanistan. Of course I could have easily prevented it, but I didn't, since that experience has turned him to a relatively better man. So yeah. However, there are certain events that I will never allow to come to pass. You can fucking count on that. Moving on. After the footage Latveria's satellites captured came to an end I used my intercom system to call Jessica into my office. Yes, Emperor Doom. She asked me upon her arrival. I need to schedule another trip to the United States for within the next week. And not just for me this time either. I spoke. Since this time I'll be bringing a few others along. Very well sir, and who would these other individuals joining us on this trip be? Jessica asked me. Christoph, Doctors Hansen and Kinney, and both their daughters, Laura and Riri. I spoke. Christoph because I think it's time I introduced him to the world at large. After all, from what I've observed of his training myself, and the reports I've read compiled by Brainiac and others, I feel he's ready for the responsibility of being known as a son of doom. Sarah and Laura are coming since I replied to that email Logan sent him and have set a meeting with Charles Xavier, also known as Professor X. And I'm bringing the two of them along so they can see Logan. Well, mostly Laura, since he hasn't visited Latveria in months. As for why Maya and Riri are coming along, it's obviously for Tony. Boy, I can't wait to add a picture of his stunned face when he finds out he's a father to my collection. Which I'm surprised hasn't happened before, given how Tony acted before he became Iron Man. I guess protection in the bedroom is one of the only things he took seriously, huh? Good for him. Understood, sir. Jessica replied after I finished speaking. I'll make the arrangements and we'll be back in the United States within 3 days' time. Perfect. Good work as always, Jessica. I told her. Thank you, sir. Jessica replied. She then left my office. After she did I then started working on a little presentation I would be putting on in a few days. I hope people like that. United States of America, Los Angeles, California. May 24, 2008. Third person, POV. Crashing into one of the many highways within Los Angeles, Tony in his Iron Man Mark III armor, skidded to a halt on the ground. Yep, definitely going to feel that one in the morning, Tony muttered to himself, as he stood back up to his feet. Just as he did so the person who sent him into the street in the first place landed before him. Obadiah Stanek, in his ironmonger suit. Give up, Tony, you can't win. Stanek spoke through his armor speakers. Sorry, never know when to quit. You should know that. Tony retorted. Shame. Well then, welcome to your funeral. Stanek replied. He then raised up his left arm in Tony's direction, which was equipped with a machine gun. Though before Stanek could fire his ears were suddenly filled with music. Specifically the song Hell's Bells by AC/DC. What the hell? Stanek questioned. Really, Tony, is this the song you want to die to? Stanek asked. First off, this isn't me. Tony immediately replied. Though whoever chose it has great taste in music. He said. Why thank you. A new voice suddenly spoke up. When it did, both Tony and Stanek looked in its direction. In doing so they saw an armored individual wearing a green cape and hood descending in the air towards their location. A cape, huh? Cool. Tony mused. Okay, who the hell are you supposed to be? The name's Dr. Doom. Your end. Doom spoke. This being the exact reason he wanted to get back to the US before the end of the week. So he could assist Tony in dealing with Ironmonger. All of it being a part of his greater plans. As for the AC/DC song, well, Victor decided to take a page from Megamind's playbook. If he was going to make an entrance he was going to do it in style. Dr. Doom? Like the king of that country, Latveria? Stanley questioned. Actually I am him, Victor declared without any hesitation. Which is exactly why I can't let you kill Iron Man here. Seeing as how my people saved him, and it would undo all our hard work if he died at the hands of a cheap knockoff, who can't compete with his genius nor could compete with the genius of his father. Ain't that right, Stanley? Hearing this, Stanley got incredibly angry. Fuck you, Doom, Stanley roared. He then raised his machine gun-equipped arm and began firing at Victor, who didn't even move as the bullets began hitting him. Seeing this, Stanley started to smirk, only to stop when he realized his bullets had done absolutely nothing to Victor's armor. They didn't even dent it like they had with Tony's. Is that all? Victor asked. Once Stanley stopped firing at him. If so, then it's my turn, he said. Then before Stanley could even respond, Victor appeared before him, almost as if by teleportation. But it wasn't this time. Victor had just used his speed to close the distance. Moving on. Before Stanley could even blink, Victor punched him right in the center of his chest, his fist easily going through the Ironmonger suit and piercing through Stanley inside of it. What? Stanley managed to say. But then he coughed up blood. Like I told you, Stanley, I am your end, Victor repeated. He then removed his hand from Stanley's chest and flicked the blood off it into the street. After Victor did this, he blasted the Ironmonger with electrical energy, frying Stanley and the suit without any hesitation, which he did for a few minutes before stopping, leaving the suit, and definitely Stanley inside of it, a black and charred mess. Once this was accomplished, Victor moved over to Tony, who had been rendered speechless by what he had just seen, more so over the fact his armor scanners couldn't get any readouts on Victor's armor. It was like nothing he had ever seen. Seeing that Tony wasn't going to speak, Victor decided to break the silence. Hey Stark, nice armor you got there. Hearing this, Tony snapped back to reality. Yeah, thanks. Yours is nice too, Tony replied. Why thank you, Victor said. So, what you say we get out of here? Yeah, sure, Tony replied. Once he did both, he and Tony used their thrusters to take off into the night sky, but not before people captured images of them flying away together using their phones. Thus the next morning on the internet both were trending, the duo having been named Armor Brothers. Chapter 68, Chapter 66, A Chat with Fury. Victor, POV. After finishing of Stanley, I followed Tony as he flew towards the Stark Industries central headquarters. Though once we got close enough for it to be in actual visual range, I stopped in the air. When I did, Tony turned to face me. Why'd you stop? He asked. I'm not really feeling up to joining the party down there, I spoke. Since right now Stark Industries HQ is swarming with LAPD, FBI, and most importantly SHIELD. The agents being led by Philip J. Coulson. Insert image of Philip J. Coulson here, who I certainly want to meet, since I liked Phil, both in the films and in the television show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., though not right now, considering Coulson is one of Fury's most trusted agents, and one of the only people in the world the eye-patching wearing king of paranoia, that likely even puts Batman's to shame, can call a friend. So I know if I go down there right now, Coulson will immediately call Fury and inform of my presence. Then I'm sure he'll drop whatever he is doing and arrive here faster than I can say motherfucker. Considering the cat and mouse game I've been playing with S.H.I.E.L.D. over the past few years ever since I became ruler of Latveria, which I certainly want to end, but on my terms. Tonight going a long way to making that a reality. Understood, Tony replied. So I guess I'll be seeing you later. Yeah, you most definitely will, Stark. I told him. For you finish all your business here, come to New York and we'll talk. Yeah, sure. Wait, what? Tony spoke. Then before he could say anything else, I took off, smirking as I'm sure Tony is watching me fly at speeds he only thought his own armors, and those based off their designs, were currently capable of. Well, he's dead wrong. Which is what I am showing him right now. I just hope Tony gets the message. Anyway, after leaving him I made it back to the East Coast in just under 2 hours. Of course I could have portaled back, but I wanted to take the scenic route, which led to learning that flying over North America at night is truly a beautiful sight for the eyes, one which I happily soaked in, until I arrived back at the Latverian embassy. Once I did, I decided to watch some anime, Mobile Suit Gundam 00 Season 1 specifically, until the new day began. After it did, I went online and found exactly what I had suspected. All the news and media websites, as well as the entire internet in general, talking about the events that took place in Los Angeles last night. I even found some photos people took of Tony and I, the internet having dubbed us Armor Brothers, which I had no hand in, I swear. But whoever did come up with that label, I want to shake their hand, since thanks to the label the connection between Tony and I has strengthened even further, which is exactly one of many reasons I intervened in his battle against Obadiah last night. Since now, given my association with Iron Man and the Fantastic Four, as well as my known actions last night, it will bring the ordinary citizens to my side, that being an integral part to completing Project Sovereign. For those who have the people on their side can accomplish many things, if they use their influence over said people correctly, which I absolutely intend to do, as well as my friendships with the heroes of this world, which I will continue to develop, not only with the current ones, but those who will appear in the future. Yes, as Hannibal from the A-Team would say, I love it when a plan comes together. Leaning back in my office chair, I couldn't help but begin chuckling. I then decided to celebrate. So I conjured forth a bottle of scotch and a Cuban cigar and partook in both like a James Bond villain would, which felt great. Now I get why they do it all the time. I continued reveling in my success until I got a notice of a special press conference that was going to be held by Tony. The moment I saw this I tuned in, and because I did I saw one of the most iconic moments in the entire MCU, where Tony revealed to the world he was Iron Man. It was even better in real life than in the films. After the revelations, reporters began peppering him with questions. Some about Stan, some about himself, and even some referencing me. Tony just took it all in stride. That is until he decided to pass the baton to me. Listen, if you have questions about the guy in the other suit, then just ask him yourself. I mean, he's not hard to find, considering he's the king of Latveria after all. Tony spoke. He then winked directly at the screen. Me knowing that was meant for me. Probably him getting me back for flying off on him last night. Well, joke's on him, since I've already prepared to deal with this shit. Turning off the screen in my office, I called Jessica into it. Yes, sir, she said. The moment she stepped inside. Yeah, looks like Stark just outed me to the entire world, even though I totally saved his ass last night. I spoke. I see, Jessica mused. So that means we must enact the plans in regards to your identity going public. Correct as always, Jessica. I replied to her. I honestly don't know what I'd do without you. Sir, we both know you'd manage perfectly fine. Jessica retorted. A smile on her face. Sure, but then who would I have these witty banter sessions with? I asked her. Brainiac. Up yours, Victor. Brainiac spoke. Yes, I spoke, chuckling. Jessica and Brainiac soon joining me. It's always good to share a few good laughs with friends. May 27, 2008. Third person, POV. Moving through the halls of the Latverian embassy, Nick Fury kept on his toes. 3 days has passed since the incident in Los Angeles involving Tony Stark, where he threw the cover story Coulson gave him out of the window and announced to the world he was Iron Man. That gave Fury one of his biggest headaches in recent years, which is why that very night he decided to have a chat with Stark. Though Fury has no doubt Stark wouldn't listen to a single word he had said. But that was an issue for another day. Right now Fury was focusing on likely the biggest issue that had been causing him headaches in the past few years. Victor Von Doom, who Stark had outed on live television as the man in the other suit of armor that had aided him in defeating Stan, which did not make Fury's bosses happy, especially since S.H.I.E.L.D. had been failing to get any solid intelligence on Latveria ever since Victor Von Doom became its leaders. Add to that the fact the opening of Doom's school, his hiring of notable American scientists like Otto Octavius and Tony Ho, the fact soldiers from his military managed to rescue Stark from captivity when S.H.I.E.L.D. and no one else could, and his actions the other night in Los Angeles, and Fury was sure the World Security Council was close to initiating a bit more drastic actions against Doom, which Fury told them point blank was a horrible idea, considering the man's financial and political status, not to mention his close personal friendship with the now world-known and beloved Fantastic Four. So say nothing of his new burgeoning relationship with Tony Stark. Then again, there was the Armor Doom War during his intervention into the battle against Stan and Stark, which Stark even admitted his own suit's sensors couldn't analyze. And Fury knew that even Stark couldn't get any sort of data off Doom's armor. Then he was a bear that was better left unpoked, which thankfully Fury's bosses agreed to do for the time being, though they still wanted something on Latveria. Hence the reason he is currently in the Latverian embassy right now. After Stark revealed Doom was the man in the third armor that night in Los Angeles, his embassy had been swarmed by not only reporters and every media outlet you could name, but also US government agents from every acronym agency you could name, all demanding some of the good kind and ruler's time. But Doom promptly ignored them all. Instead, he simply released a prepared press release statement to the media, and let his lawyers and other people deal with the government, which led to the King of Latveria agreeing to be interviewed in regards to his actions in Los Angeles by a pair of agents from Homeland Security, but only them. A deal the US government agreed to, given Victor's status in many circles. So when Fury got wind of this deal, he decided to go in undercover, as one of the Homeland Security agents Victor Von Doom had agreed to have an interview with. Fury bringing along one of his most trusted agents as backup, posing as the other Homeland Security agent, Barbara Bobby Morse. Codename, Mockingbird. Insert image of Barbara Morse / Mockingbird here. Now here they are. Soon Fury and Bobby arrived at the door to Victor's office, having been led there by his assistant Jessica, who both Fury and Bobby could tell was not simply a normal assistant the moment they had met her. They both knew the woman was highly trained, from the way she moved, to her other mannerisms. But they said nothing about it, especially given she was the assistant to the monarch of a foreign nation, though they both made a note of it for the file on Latveria S.H.I.E.L.D. had, even though it now contained hardly anything useful. Just through here. King Victor is waiting. Jessica said. Yes, thank you, Bobby replied. What my partner said? Fury added. He then opened the door and entered the office, Bobby following right behind him. When both of them were inside, Fury closed the door. As he did, he then focused, along with Bobby, on the King of Latveria, who was leisurely sitting behind his desk, Victor Von Doom. Taking Victor in, both Fury and Bobby immediately felt tingling sensations on the back of their necks. They instantly could tell Victor was more dangerous than he appeared, thanks to their years of training and experience as members of S.H.I.E.L.D. Well, to think I would get the big boss of S.H.I.E.L.D. himself. This is a nice surprise. And a welcome one, since I've been meaning for us to have a chat for a while. Victor spoke. though neither Bobby nor Fury reacted. Sorry sir, I don't know what you mean. Fury said. My name is Colonel Nick Fury, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Victor interrupted and finished for Fury. And I can only assume that woman standing next to you is one of your agents, he said. Even though Victor knew exactly who he was looking at. Bobby Morse aka Mockingbird. Upon seeing her he used his technopathy to instruct the nanites in the room to obtain a blood sample from her, like they were doing with Nick Fury. Since Victor wanted to see if this reality's version of Mockingbird had a mix of the Infinity Formula and a super soldier serum flowing in her veins. That's also the reason he had his nanites collect blood from Nick Fury, to see if he had either the Infinity Formula, or a super soldier serum, in his veins like his many incarnations did in the comics. Though it's not like Victor needed either serums, given the many he has created. He simply wishes to sate his curiosity in regards to them. Hearing Victor so blatantly call him out, Fury decided to drop any and all pretenses. Yes, you're right. I'm Nick Fury, Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. And this woman standing next to me is one of my agents. You can call her Mockingbird, he said. Oh Mockingbird, does that mean you mimic voices or something? Victor asked. Haha. Bobby responded with a dry laugh. Very funny, she deadpanned. It was just a question. Victor mused. Yeah, so how about we cut the bullshit and you tell us what you actually want? Bobby spoke. What my agent said? Fury added. All right then, Victor replied to them. Let's cut to the chase. I know S.H.I.E.L.D. has been trying to gather intelligence on both me and my country ever since I liberated from the rule of its previous governments and the idiotic ruling family, the Fortunovs. Put simply, I want you to stop doing that. Since no matter how hard you try, or what method you use, you'll never be able to get the results you desire. You sound so confident, but you never know. Bobby spoke. No, Agent Mockingbird, I do know, Victor replied. For you are talking about my country, my homeland, the place that I rule, Latveria. So when I say you will get nothing on it, unless I allow it, then take those words to be the truth. He spoke in a tone of finality. Both Bobby and Fury, realizing Victor was dead serious. The look in his eyes told them he wasn't lying. We hear you. But unfortunately we can't just stop doing what we are doing. Fury said. No, I know. Your boss is on the World Security Council, not to mention the pressure you're getting from elsewhere. Most likely from the United Nations. Victor casually spoke, revealing exactly what Fury had been dealing with over the past couple of years. Just how far does his reach go? Fury thought. I do not envy your job, Director Fury. Victor said. All those people giving you orders, expecting you to carry out impossible tasks at time. I guess that's why all the hair atop your head has fallen out. He spoke, wiping a fake tear away from his eye. Fury's one good eye twitched at that comment, while Bobby stifled her laughter, since she had to admit that was funny. But have no fear, since I'll help you keep from losing any more hair and get all your bosses off your back. Victor spoke. How? What could you possibly do? Fury asked. When he did, Victor put a devil's grin on his face. Why, I'm glad you asked. Simply put, I'll give you access to resources that will make your overall job easier. Technology, intelligence, even actual assets that will help your agency in completing some of its most difficult missions. And what do you want in return? Fury asked. Since he had been around long enough to know a deal like this didn't come without some sort of catch. We can work that out later, Victor easily replied. After all, I don't want to overwhelm the both of you too much in one day. Instead, let's table that discussion for now and let me tell you why I assisted Tony Stark against Obadiah Stane in Los Angeles 3 nights ago. Now that I would like to hear. Bobby spoke. Why did you do it? Because I didn't want Stark, nor any innocent people to get hurt. Victor spoke. You're joking? Bobby asked. Oh no, I assure you. I am quite serious, Victor replied. As a friend of the people, I couldn't simply sit by and watch as they got caught in the crossfire of that battle. So I stepped in and ended it before any real casualties could occur, including Stark's. Given that it was members of my military that rescued him. And how exactly did they accomplish that when on one else, even S.H.I.E.L.D. could? Fury asked. All in due time, Nick. Once you accept my deal, of course. Victor replied. Though I don't need an answer today. Take some time, think about it. Then get back to me. He spoke. Victor then threw a card at Fury, who caught it. Once he did, Fury looked down at the card and saw a phone number on it. A number you can reach me at when you decide about my offer. Victor said. Well then, good day to you both. He spoke. After he did, Fury and Bobby took their leave of his office, and then were escorted out of the Latverian embassy entirely. Both of them still thinking about that meeting they just had with Victor. Bobby wondering how much of it she should tell her husband, Clint, about, while Fury was busy mulling over Victor's offer, as well as elevating the man as the most dangerous threat in the entire world at the moment. The meeting they just had having sealed the deal in his mind. Chapter 69, Chapter 67, X-Men. Victor, POV. As I used the exterior surveillance equipment installed across the entire embassy grounds to make sure Nick and Bobby actually took their leave, I began planning what I would give Fury once he accepted my deal, which I know he would. Since unlike his bosses, Fury doesn't have his head up his heart, or is part of that tentacle worshipping cult. Meaning I feel we can accomplish great things together in the future. Plus having the true S.H.I.E.L.D. in my corner will go a long way to making sure Project Sovereign succeeds without too much unnecessary bloodshed. Well, the blood of those that matters. As I continued contemplating the future, I was interrupted as Jessica entered my office. Yes, Jessica. I asked her. Sir, sorry to disturb you, but your second meeting of the day has arrived. She explained to me. They're early. I spoke. Yes. So, what will you have me do? She asked. Having them shown to a meeting room, and let them know I'll be there momentarily. I said. Of course. Jessica replied. She then left my office. After she did, I took a moment to center myself and prepare mentally for my second big meeting of the day. Once I did, I left my office and headed straight for the room where my guests were waiting. Arriving, I entered it, finding some of the most iconic Marvel characters enjoying some snacks and refreshments. I'm speaking of the X-Men. First we have the founder of the group himself, and one of the most powerful naturally gifted telepaths to ever be born on Earth, Charles Xavier, also known as Professor X, who thankfully looks nothing like Patrick Stewart, given that the man still played Picard in Star Trek. Second, we have the weather mistress SND chocolate goddess, both literally and figuratively, herself Ororo Monroe, who is also known as Storm, who is the spitting image of Halle Berry. Insert image of Ororo Monroe/Storm here. Third, we have the big blue furball, and one of the smartest men in the entire Marvel universe, Henry Hank McCoy aka Beast. Insert image of Hank McCoy/Beast here. Then finally there's Logan, who obviously needs no introduction. Hello to you all. You might already know me, but I still feel introductions are in order. I am Victor Werner von Doom, the King of Latveria. A pleasure to make your acquaintance. I spoke. Then right after I did, both Sarah and Laura entered the room. The latter walking right up to the couch Logan was sitting on and took a seat beside him. Ah, so this little one must be the Laura you've told us about, Logan. Ororo said. Yeah, she is. Logan replied. And you must be Dr. Sarah Kinney. Hank spoke to Sarah. I have to say, from what little I've been able to find of your work before your unlawful imprisonment began, has me very intrigued. He said. Why, thank you, Dr. Henry McCoy. Hank finished for Sarah, but most people simply refer to me as Hank. Understood, Dr. McCoy, Sarah replied. She then took a seat on the couch Hank was sitting on, and the two of them suddenly began a scientific discussion, getting lost in their own little world, while Ororo was focused on teasing Logan about Laura. Seeing this, I turned my attention to the only other unoccupied man in the room, Charles, who thankfully I haven't sensed trying to get into my head. But that doesn't mean I'm letting my guard down around the man. Oh no, especially considering about what I know about the various versions of him. That's also the reason, in preparation for his visit today, I gave everyone who is currently staying on the embassy grounds a bracelet I invented, which emits a psychic dampening field around the wearer that not even an Omega-level telepath can break through. I know, since I did several tests runs with Thaddeus. So if Charles is a mind rapist, he isn't forcing his way into anyone's heads here today, though I really hope he's not, since I have plans that involve the man I want to see come to fruition. But today's meeting will determine if that is going to be possible. I moved to sit in the chair next to Charles. So Charles, what has Logan told you about me? Not much, Charles replied. Simply that you found him and informed him of Laura's existence, but not before rescuing her from the people who had been holding her captive, along with her mother, he explained. He also told me how you are a friend to mutants, EVOs. I immediately replied. Me and those around me use the term EVOs, Charles, because honestly the word mutant leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It also makes my mind think of grotesque monsters featured in horror movie films or horrible diseases, which should definitely not be used in application to people like you, Charles. Since you are still human, you have just evolved in a sense. I spoke, making sure to get my point across to Charles, because I'm serious about turning the word mutant, when referencing those with active X gene, into nothing but a derogatory slur. Right, Charles replied. Anyway, to tell you the truth, I asked Logan to arrange this meeting between us because I require your assistance on a very time-sensitive manner. Oh, and what might that be? I asked. Even though I already know, for the past few months many young new EVOs and their families have been disappearing, and I fear for their safety. So I was wondering if you could help me locate them. I can't, I replied. Why? Charles asked. Bet I already know where the world are you are talking about. In my country, Latveria, I revealed. Why are they there? Ororo suddenly asked me. Seems she finished teasing Logan about Laura and decided to jump right into my conversation. Not that I mind. For their protection, I replied. Protection, you say? Yes, Professor Xavier. For their protection, I spoke. For your school is nowhere near big enough to house all the young EVOs and their loved ones who need protection from the ordinary citizens who lash out against them, simply because they do not have a good understanding of what EVOs are, to the hate groups that actively hunt them down, like the Friends of Humanity, not to mention the threat some EVO may pose to themselves or others around them, depending on what powers awaken within them once their X gene activates. These and other reasons are why I am actively having those loyal to me search the globe for EVOs and bring them to Latveria, where they can some semblance of a normal life, at least until the world learns to accept them, or until I become its ruler. But I'm not saying that out loud. You are doing a good deed, King Victor. But how are these EVOs supposed to be accepted in the world if you are hiding them away in your own country? Charles asked me. That is something I wish for you and your X-Men to assist me with. I spoke, shocking all the X-Men present. Of course I don't accept an answer today. Take some time, think about it, and then get back to me. I spoke. All right. I can at least do that. Xavier agreed. Glad to hear it, I replied. Once I did, I began discussing a few more things with the X-Men, before eventually they all left. Though not before I offered them an open invitation to come and see Latveria in the future, which I'm sure all of them will just fall in love with after they do, all according to my plans. As always, it's good to be Doom. Chapter 70, Chapter 68, Iron Daddy. June 2, 2008. Leaning against the SUV I had ridden in, I waited and watched as Tony's private jet landed on the tarmac. The man having finally arrived in New York, having handled all his business in Los Angeles surrounding his coming out as Iron Man to the entire world, as well as that minor nuisance once known as a Bediastana. The plane soon came to a full stop. Once it did, the cabin door opened and Tony stepped out, quickly followed by 3 other people. Ho Yinsen. Happy Hogan. Insert image of Happy Hogan here. Then finally the Miss Pepper Potts. Insert image of Pepper Potts here. As they started walking toward their own SUV, I began walking towards them, reaching them in no time. Where once I did, Tony and I shared a man's handshake. Doom. Tony said. Stark. I replied. Thanks for outing me on television. I really enjoyed that. I sarcastically told him. No need to thank me, just doing a favor for a friend. Tony replied. You mean like how I saved your ass from getting beating into the ground by Stana? I retorted. The two of us then shared a laugh. Oh no, now there's 2 of him. Pepper muttered. As she did, I turned my attention to her. I then walked up, took her free hand, and gently placed a kiss on it before flashing her a charming smile. A pleasure, Miss Potts. Victor Von Doom, at your service. And you have my utmost respect. Anyone able to have up with the shenanigans of Mr. Stark deserves at least that much. Hey, Tony cried. But I ignored him, in favor of watching Pepper blush a little bit at my words. Why, thank you. And it's a pleasure to meet you as well, King Victor. Please, no need for such formalities. I get enough of that of it is already. If you wish, please simply address me as Victor or Mr. Doom. I told her. Okay, Pepper replied. Thank you, I said to her. I then turned my attention to Happy. Mr. Hogan. Mr. Doom. He replied. Once he did, I turned to Yinsen. Dr. Yinsen, glad to see you're doing well. I told him. Yes, thank you, I am. He replied. I'm sure Tony is very happy. I said. Someone call me. Tony asked. Not you, Tony, I'm referring to Yinsen's daughter who is currently in my employee. I said. Oh, you mean the chick those soldiers of yours showed us when they saved our asses? Tony questioned. The very same. I replied. Cool. Tony said. Once he did, I focused my attention back on Yinsen. So, I hear Tony has hired you. I asked. He has. Yinsen replied. That's good. I said. Very good. Since now no other terrorist organization will be able to get their hands on Yinsen without going through Iron Man, meaning his genius is safe. Well, that remains to be seen. Yinsen replied. Hey, is this National Bash Tony Day or something? Tony asked. Or something. I replied, earning a laugh from everyone except Tony, who is giving me the stink eye, which I am promptly ignoring. Moving on. After the laughter died down, we gotta move on. Everyone got into their respective vehicles and we headed to our destination, arriving in no time. Our destination being the newly constructed skyscraper that will serve as the main headquarters of the future foundation. Image here. After months it's finally completed, and it looks magnificent. Whoa, nice building. Tony said, looking at the future foundation HQ. Thanks. I replied. Now then, allow me to show you all around. I said. I then started making my way inside of the skyscraper, whose grand opening party was this weekend, which I invited Tony to, since he was going to be in town anyway. An invite he accepted. Norman being the same. Man, this party is shaping up to be quite something. As I walked, the others followed behind me. Then once all of us were inside of the building, I began showing them around just like I promised. Everything from the conference rooms, to the state-of-the-art labs the building houses for those accepted into the foundation to work on their projects. Tony practically drooling when we got to that part of the tour. Thankfully Pepper was there to smack him back to reality. Literally. Since she slapped him on the back of the head to knock him out of his stupor. Boy, Tony is lucky to have a woman like that by his side. Now he just needs to get his shit together enough to seal the deal. Good luck, buddy. Anyway, in no time at all the tour came to an end. Once it did, I lead everyone back down to the main lobby, where I had a surprise waiting for our guests. Tony, Yinsen exclaimed, the moment we returned to the main lobby, since his daughter was there waiting for us. Arranged by yours truly. She also wasn't alone. Maya, Riri, Kristoff, Jessica, and the Fantastic Four were also all there, since I wanted all of us to meet and mingle before the party, for various reasons. Yeah, Dad. It's me, Tony replied. She then ran up to Yinsen and wrapped him in a hug, which he reciprocated. So that's the other Tony, huh? Tony mused. She's quite the looker. She also plays for the other team. I whispered to him. Tony simply nodding at my words. He then focused his attention on Maya, who walked up to him, Riri by her side, the latter sporting a cramped expression on her face, while the latter wore a bright smile. Since Riri is one of Tony's biggest fans, which is a huge irony. Hey Tony, Maya said. Hey, he replied. Sorry, but do I know you? He asked. When he did, Maya gave him a flat look, while Pepper facepalmed. Happy, the knowledgeable man that he is, decided to immediately step away from the situation and go mingle with the F4. Bern, Switzerland. 1999 New Year's. Ringing any bells? Maya asked, with slight anger in her voice. Though if I were her I would be a little angry as well. Tony didn't reply for a moment, until I saw he got a light bulb moment. Yes. Dr. Hansen. Weird formula. Tony muttered. Yeah, that's me. Maya replied. And this is my daughter, Riri, she said. Riri stepping up to Tony. Hello Mr. Stark. Riri said to him. Hey there kid. Tony replied to her. He then stared at Riri for a few moments, before he got a slightly cramped expression on his face. He then quickly turned his attention back to Maya. Sorry, you said this is your daughter. Yep. Maya replied. Born in the year 2000. She spoke. Why? Well she sort of looks like my mother. Tony trailed off. A look of realization passing over his face as he finally put all the clues together. Pepper getting the same look. While Maya sent Tony a smirk and a nod, likely confirming the man's own thoughts that Riri is his kid. When this happened Tony suddenly got an oh shit look on his face. Click. Which I immediately captured as a picture using my phone. Once I did I quickly moved away from the group of 4, not wanting to be around for the mess that happened next, since shit was definitely about to hit the fan. So instead of stepping in it I joined the F4, Happy, and Christoph. The 4 suddenly giving me a strange look as I joined their little group. What's up guys, something on my face? I asked them. No, but why didn't you tell us you had a son? Susan asked me. Oh, I didn't tell you that. I'm sure I did. I replied. You didn't. Johnny said. Yeah Doom, we would have remembered something like that. Ben added. So, where's his mother? Dead. I immediately replied. But before you all start getting any strange ideas let me tell you Christoph is my adopted son. I explained. When I did the 4 dropped the strange looks on their faces, while Susan breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, please don't tell me you guys thought I got together with Christoph's mother and then abandoned her. I asked the 4. Since that was likely along the lines of what they were thinking about me. When none of them answered my question and worked to avoid eye contact I knew my guess at their thoughts was correct. Upon realizing this I leveled a deadpan stare at the then. Wow, really guys? Do you all truly think so little of me? Even you Susan? It's not like that Victor. Susan immediately replied. It's just, you show up with a boy who says he's your son, and you never mentioned him before so. It's alright, I understand. I replied. But talk to me before jumping to conclusions next time. Okay. All the 4 replied in unison. Excellent. I said. I then walked up to Susan and placed my arm around her waist, before planting a quick kiss on her lips. Now then, let's stop with all the doom and gloom. We've got a party to plan, I said, only to start earning strange looks from the rest of the 4 again a second later. Meanwhile Susan was blushing like a schoolgirl. Don't tell me. Susan dear, did you not tell the rest of them about us? I asked her, only for Susan's face to get even redder at my question. Confirming she did not. Well it could be worse. I could be in Tony's shoes at the moment, who is looking like he would rather be anywhere else right now. So in this regard I win. Sorry not sorry Iron Man. Third person, POV. Susan and Victor. Susan and Victor. Susan and Victor. Reed continued to think. As the 2 of them told him and the rest of the 4 they had taken a new step in their relationship. A more intimate one. Listening to this Reed couldn't help but feel a tightening in chest. Looking at Susan in Victor's arm he couldn't help but start to think. That should be him holding her. Susan, why? Reed suddenly began to think. He wanted to know why she had chosen Victor over him. In that moment Reed Richards started to experience an emotion he had never felt before. Jealousy. Chapter 72, Chapter 70, Party Crashers. June 5, 2008. Standing in front of my bedroom's fully body mirror I made sure my clothing, which was my iconic green suit, was pristine. For tonight was the night of the grand opening party for the new HQ of the Future Foundation. All the preparations had been completed. Now, it's party time. But more than that tonight is also the night I will formally introduce Christoph as my son to the rest of the world. Along with reveal my new relationship status with Susan, which she agreed to do just the other day. Seeing that my suit was pristine, along with the rest of my appearance, I stepped away from the mirror. I then headed outside of my room and then toward where the vehicles were parked that would usher me, and everyone else that was joining me tonight, to the Future Foundation HQ. Arriving I found everyone else who was going with me to the party tonight had already arrived. Which was Chris Roth of course. Maya and Riri, since Tony was still coming tonight despite what had happened the other day and Dr. Hansen wanted Riri to get some more personal time with her father. Jessica, who is currently rocking a strapless black dress that leaves nothing about her body to the imagination. Then finally there were Zid and Thrag, who I had called over from Latveria to provide extra support for tonight. Since although this party has security up the wazoo, and both Tony and the F4 will be present, I still feel better having some big guns around. For again this is a Marvel universe, and generally when you think shit can't go wrong is exactly when it does. So yeah. Plus this is a perfect chance to see how well the cover identities I crafted for Zid and Thrag, as I did for the other Primarches, holding up under high public scrutiny. The reason I did so is that so my Primarches can move around freely outside of Latveria without their origins being looked into. At least until Project Sovereign is fully realized. Then they will throw their fake names away. but until then for most of the time outside of Latveria Zed will be known to the public as Connor Kent, while Thrag will be known as Nolan Grayson. The moment I arrived everyone looked in my direction. Well, what are we waiting for? There's a party happening with our names on it, I said. Once I did everyone got into the vehicles and started heading towards the party. As the vehicle I was in came to a stop outside of the entrance to the Future Foundation HQ I stepped out of it. Christoph getting out right behind me, dressed in his own green suit. The moment we did this camera flashes assaulted us, along with questions shouted at us by reporters, which are being held back by security, and several doombots. Ignoring all of them I smiled and waved and began walking, Christoph mirroring my actions. The two of us being a father and son bullshit combo, which we did until we were inside the building. Then immediately after we were I saw Susan approaching me, wearing a stunning dark blue dress that matches her eyes. You look lovely, I told her. Why thank you, Susan replied, taking my left arm. Then a few seconds later Jessica appeared and took my right one. The spider-powered woman having been showing me a lot more affection over the past few days after I gave her a shot of vitamin D, which Susan isn't taking too kindly to, but I'm not worried. After all, since I'm going to have multiple queens I can manage this easily. Susan, Jessica said. Jessica, Susan replied. Ladies, please. We're here to enjoy ourselves, I spoke, ignoring the glares both of them sent me, since I am not beta male harem protagonist, but Victor Von Doom. Enough said. Seeing that their glares weren't affecting me in the slightest both women backed down. Once they did I nodded, after which our entire group entered the conference hall where the party was taking place, all eyes falling on us as we did. Then after they did I started hearing whispers, which I promptly ignored, instead choosing to start mingling with all the guests present tonight, which ranged from scientists, to major players in the business world, to even several movie stars and talk show hosts, etc., all of whom have expressed public support for the Future Foundation. As I chatted with the likes of Oprah Winfrey, Jimmy Kimmel, Conan, and even Elon Musk, I stopped when I noticed a group in the room that was definitely not on the guest list, being led by a dead man, at least in my previous life, since the person I am looking at right now is none other than Chadwick Boseman aka Prince T'Challa of Wakanda aka the future Black Panther. Insert image of Black Panther here. He is currently surrounded by a small group of Dora Milaje, being led by none other than Okoye, all of whom are heading right towards me. Oh, they are definitely being subtle about it but I can tell I am their main objective by the small glances they are sending my way. Taking note of this I contacted Brainiac using my technopathy. Brainiac, mind explaining to me why I am currently looking at the price of Wakanda and members of his personal guard/harem at the Future Foundation grand opening party? I asked him. What? No, that's actually one moment. Brainiac replied. My deepest apologies Emperor. It seems the Wakandians added themselves to the guest list by taking the place of another, which I didn't manage to notice until now. Shall I contact security and have them escort them out? No, that's all right. I will handle them and their prince myself, I replied, having some idea of why the Wakandians have gone through all this trouble to get to me. And as for the Wakandians getting into the party, don't beat yourself about it, Brainiac. You know their technology is almost as advanced as Latveria's. Just make sure this never happens again. Yes sir, Brainiac replied. I then cut our communication before contacting Zed and Thrag telepathically to join up with me, since we've got some party crashers to deal with. Chapter 73, Quick Poll. Chapter 74, Chapter 71, Confrontation and Familiar Faces. After contacting Zed and Thrag telepathically I slowly began making my way towards the Wakandian party. But just like they were subtly making their ways towards me I decided to subtly make my ways towards them, which gave Zed and Thrag plenty of time to arrive at my side. Then once they did only a few seconds passed before our two groups finally came face to face. When this happened I put a stupidly big, and fake, smile on my face and extended my left hand in T'Challa direction, the man taking it and shaking it. Prince T'Challa of Wakanda. Nice to meet you, I told him. The same to you King Doom, T'Challa replied. Once he did we ended our handshake. I must say, your reputation precedes you, since you aren't like what I imagined at all, T'Challa said to me. Why thank you, I get that a lot, I replied. Now then, while I am glad to see a fellow small nation supporting the Future Foundation I am curious as to what you and your people are doing here tonight, since I myself helped craft the guest list for tonight and I don't remember there being a delegation from Wakanda on it. I spoke. Maybe it slipped your mind, T'Challa suggested. No, it definitely would not have, I replied. I then dropped the fake smile adorning my face. So let's dispense with the foreplay Prince T'Challa and get down to business. Why are you and your people here tonight? Upon hearing me, and seeing my change in demeanor, T'Challa and all the Dora Milaje with him also ever so slightly shifted their own. Very well King Doom. We shall dispense with the foreplay as you said, T'Challa replied to me. Good, I retorted. Now, why are you here tonight? Your armor. We learned it contains vibranium, I said, finishing T'Challa's sentence for him. It also belongs to me. So before you ask, no you cannot have the vibranium back. Not that I would hand it over to you and your people even if you did. I spoke. Despite the fact you think you have the rights to all vibranium in the entire world, simply because your nation was lucky enough to be blessed with an abundance of it ages ago, I whispered. Only loud enough for those in the immediate vicinity to hear. I'm sure I don't know what your dash. Do not insult my intelligence, Prince T'Challa. I interrupted him. And don't you interrupt our nation's prince like that, King Victor. Okoye said to me. I will. For as you just stated, miss, I am a king and the one you are following tonight is nothing more than still a prince. Our stations are currently different. Remember that. I spoke. Only for Okoye to send me a nasty glare and take a step forward. But when she did, Zed stepped up and got on her way. Don't. He simply said to her. My subordinate is right. We wouldn't want to cause a scene here in front of all these people now, would we? I asked. Okoye, T'Challa said. When he did, she stepped back. Zed doing the same. Great. Now then, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, do not insult my intelligence, Prince T'Challa. For I know the truth of Wakanda. I know it is not the third world African nation it claims to me. I know it is one of the most advanced countries in the entire world. Decades ahead of everyone else in technology, medicine, etc. I know it is all thanks to the vibranium your nation works to tirelessly keep secret. And I know how the rest of the world would react if the truth of your nation was revealed in the wrong manner. Especially to the rest of the black population worldwide. I wonder how many would react, knowing Wakanda had the power to prevent the slave trade and even colonization and didn't? I mean, as a ruler of a small nation myself, I can understand your ancestors' actions. But you know people, they aren't as understanding as me. I spoke. T'Challa getting a look of anger on his face, his Dora mileage as well, as I spoke. You dare to threaten Wakanda? T'Challa asked me. Yes, I dare. I easily replied. Now then, kindly take your leave of this place. Otherwise by tomorrow morning some governments might get actual satellite scans of your nation and some major media outlets might get information packets about Wakandian activities. I spoke. T'Challa getting angrier as the seconds passed as I did. But he didn't do anything. We're leaving? He spoke. He then turned and started walking away. His Dora mileage following behind me. Good. The big kitty knows his place. Though now given the confrontation we just had, I need to accelerate my plans in regards to Wakanda. Because if this reality's T'Challa is anything like his Earth 616 counterpart, then I need to take care him early. Otherwise he'll become a pain in the ass. Becoming the champion of Bast, becoming the king of the dead, combining alchemy and science to create a new branch of science known as shadow physics. Yeah, I do not want to deal with that Black Panther if I can help it. Especially since there's room for only one badass small foreign nation monarch, with a mastery of both science and magic. Yours truly. And I have never been good at sharing. Once T'Challa and his people took their leave, I dismissed Sid and Thrag from my side so they could continue enjoying the party. Then right after I did, I found Norman approaching me. His family with him. Harry looking like a young James Franco. Insert image of Harry Osborn here. Seeing them I smiled. Norman, good to see you. I told him. The same to you, Victor. Norman replied. The two of us then shook hands. After he did, I turned my attention to Emily and Harry. Oh, and you must be the lovely Ms. Emily Osborn and the little Spitfire Harry Norman has told me so much about. A pleasure to meet you both. I said them. The same to you, King Doom. Emily told me. A real king. Cool. Harry said. Yes, young man, being a king is cool. I told him. Getting a laugh from the entire Osborn family. We then mingled for a bit more, and I even briefly discussed Emily's project concerning bacteria that could dissolve plastic in the ocean. A plan which we agreed to talk more about at a later date. Though after a few moments the Osborns got on their way. After they did, I got ready to go back into full mingling mode. Only to stop when I spotted yet another familiar face. A young Warren Worthington III. Also known as Angel, and then Archangel in the comics. Insert image of Warren Worthington 3/Angle here. The boy is with his parents, and from the looks of him he hasn't awakened to his powers yet. Though given the look of his age I'm sure it will happen soon. And when it does he'll have a good support system to fall back on. Given what I know about his general history. After his powers developed, his father spurned him. Then down the road, after he finally found acceptance, he ended up becoming a pawn of Apocalypse. Well, not in this reality and certainly not on my watch. As I made this mental note, I decided to go introduce myself to the future winged man. Only to stop in my tracks when Brainiac contacted me via technopathy. Since I built him to be able to. Sorry to disturb you, my emperor. But I wanted to inform you I have located another uninvited guest to tonight's events that I thought you should be aware of. Considering this particular guest's set of skills. Brainiac explained to me. Very well, I replied. Point me in their direction. I said. When I did, Brainiac did just that. After which I found myself looking at none other than Betsy Braddock aka Psylock, disguised as one of the party's servers. Insert image of Betsy Braddock/Psylock here. As I stared at her I wanted to groan. Given that she's a mercenary/assassin for hire. Meaning she is likely here tonight to try and complete a job. Man, in Marvel when it rains it fucking pours. Oh well, nothing I can do. Now then, time to stop a potential assassination attempt. Chapter 75, Chapter 72, New Employee. After getting Psylock in my sights I got ready to start along my way towards her. Only to stop when I noticed she was heading towards me just like the Wakandians were earlier. So seeing this I stopped what I was doing and just waited to see how the next few minutes played out. Which eventually led to me feeling Psylock trying to influence me telepathically. Telling me I was likely her target. Though I'm not surprised. considering all the waves I've been making. In fact, I was starting to feel a little insulted no one had hired a top-grade assassin to take me out. Not that said assassin would ever succeed in their mission, but still, it's the thought that counts. Moving on. I decided to play along with Psylock's game and started moving where she was directing me telepathically, which was to one of the room's set of doors, which she had me exit. The woman herself then joined me a minute later. Once she did, the two of us headed to one of the building's many unused offices on its 5th floor. After our arrival, Psylock turned to face me. She then created one of her iconic psychic energy constructs in her left hand, which was her favored weapon of choice, a katana blade. Very nice, I said. Betsy getting a shocked expression on her face the moment I did, which is to be expected, since this whole time she had thought she had me completely under her telepathic control. But now she knows that was nothing more than a lie. Upon realizing this, Betsy quickly reacted, and attempted to sever my head from my body using her weapon, marking her as a true professional of her craft. Too bad for her, she picked the wrong one to target today. Easily dodging Betsy's katana by stepping back, I then stepped forward and wrapped my left hand around her throat. After I did, I slammed her back first against the door, and then shocked her a bit with some electricity, before extending my pincers and digging them all slightly into her neck, drawing blood. A hardened expression on my face, I looked her directly in the eyes. Don't speak. Listen up. You move an inch, you die. You attempt to use your powers in any way, you die. Blink once if you hear and understand my words. I spoke. Betsy then blinked once. Good, I said. Now then, who sent you to kill me? I asked her, only to be met with silence. I grabbed Betsy's right wrist with my right hand and then squeezed it until I heard an audible pop telling me I had broken it just as intended. Ack. Betsy cried in agony, but I ignored her cries and asked my question once more. Who sent you to kill me? I asked, placing my free hand on Betsy's other wrist. No, wait. Only for her to begin begging me. I'll talk. Just please, don't. She pleased. Go on. I told her. No one specifically sent me to kill you. She spoke. I just took this job so I could be set for life. Explain. I commanded her. Someone, I don't know who, a few days ago put out an open contract. $5 million goes to the person who can kill the current Latverian monarch, Victor Von Doom. Betsy explained. I see. I'm used. As I took in the information Betsy just relayed to me, I used my telepathy to determine the truth of her words. My cursory scans proving the validity of her statement. Someone had put a bounty on my ass. Quite a big one too. I'm actually sort of touched. Even though the person, or persons, responsible for the putting out of the bounty have just signed their own death warrants. Since no one is allowed to make such move against Doom and not accept to end up a corpse. Thank you for sharing that with me, Ms. Braddock. I told her. Betsy getting another shocked expression on her face at me using her name. How did you dash? You're not the only one with psychic powers, Ms. Braddock, and compared to me you are nothing in that regard. I truthfully spoke. Now then, time for you to be on your way, I said. I then pulled Betsy away from the door and opened it, revealing Thrag standing on the other side, who I had contacted telepathically as soon as Psylock made her move against me and instructed him to follow us, just in case I needed backup, for I am nothing if not careful. Placing Betsy in front of Thrag, I removed my hand from around her throat and retracted my pincers. Thrag meet Betsy Braddock, also known as the EVO mercenary, Psylock. Betsy meet Thrag, one of my best employees and one of your new co-workers. I spoke. Wait, what? Betsy said to me. Co-worker? And what the hell is an EVO? She asked. To answer your second question first, EVOs are a term I created for people with powers like you and me. Of course there's a lot more to it than that, but that's all you need to know about the subject right now. As for your first question, yes, Thrag is your new co-worker. Since you work for me now, I spoke. For I would have to be a fool to let someone like Psylock get away. And if I refuse? She asked me. Well, that is an option, but I wouldn't recommend taking it, since it will lead to your immediate death. I said. Because if I didn't think you could be of some use to me you would have been dead the moment I was sure we were alone. I spoke, looking Betsy in her eyes, putting a sinister smile on my face. Seeing this she took a step back. Right then. So Betsy, what will it be? Come and work exclusively for me or die right here and now, I said. The former. I'll work for you. She spoke. Excellent. I replied. Well then Thrag, you know what to do with her now. Yes, my liege. Thrag replied. Oh, and if Betsy here tries to escape you can break her but don't kill her. Unless she goes too far. Understood. Yes. Thrag replied. Good man. I said, ignoring the look of horror on Psylock's face as she switched her gaze between me and Thrag, now finally realizing the depth of how much she just fucked up. Well, too bad for her, it's too late for regrets. Now her purple-haired ass in mine, and I don't intend to let it go, ever. Chapter 76, Chapter 73, Friendly Advice. After I gave my final instructions to Thrag, he and Betsy headed off. Thrag going to take her back to the embassy, where he would use a magical teleportation gate I had installed there to take Psylock back to Latveria, where she would then be fully debriefed about anything she knew, before being out to work, most likely under Natasha. Then again she could end up working under Zima or one of the Primarches. I'm not sure, since I really don't like to micromanage my people unless absolutely necessary. I'll check in on her case when I return to Latveria. since I'm sure no matter where Betsy ends up she'll end up doing good work and furthering my causes. Then again she could fick up and get herself killed. Either way I don't lose. Anyway, once those were gone I waited a few moments before exiting the office myself. I then started making my way back towards the party, only to encounter Tony in the lobby, drinking straight from a bottle of champagne as he sat at the front desk, a haggard expression on his face. Seeing them like this I decided to see what was up. For seeing a depressed-looking Tony Stark is just so strange and uncomfortable I can't leave it alone. Arriving at his side I sat in the open chair next to me, which made Tony look at me. Doom. Stark. I replied. So, mind telling me the reason you're getting shit-faced in the lobby alone? Oh, I don't know, maybe it has something to do with Pepper treating me like I'm worse than a cockroach ever since you introduced me to my daughter the other day, he exclaimed. Right. That's right, buddy. I replied. So, what do you think of Riri? I asked him. Honestly, she's like a young female version of me, Tony admitted. She's a great kid. Maya did a good job raising her. Much better than I would have done if I had met her before this. He spoke, tapping the arc reactor in his chest. I mean, I don't think you were that bad a person before you became Iron Man. Sure, you were a man whore, a showboater, a flake dash. Gee, thanks for trying to cheer me up. Tony interrupted, and sarcastically remarked. You didn't let me finish. I replied. Sure, you weren't the best but you weren't the worst either. And who knows, if you had known about Riri in the beginning then maybe the Tony right now would have shown up years ago. I explained. Maybe. He admitted. Still, I mean all of a sudden I'm a dad. A father. Yeah, and let me tell you it's not easy. I told him. But I'm sure you'll do alright. Actually I'm surprised there aren't more little Starks out there given your former behavior. Well, protection in the bedroom was one of the only things my old man drilled into my head, Tony admitted. So I guess that's something I got from him. Even though the bastard never even told me he loved me. I'm sure he did. I replied. No, I know he did. Yeah well, who knows? He muttered. Right. So anyway Stark, get over yourself. I spoke. What? Tony asked me. You heard me. I replied. Get over yourself. You've got a daughter who needs you now. Plus Pepper. Listen my friend, it's obvious you two would be great together. So as a wise man once said, either butt up or shut up. I mean you're Tony Stark, but more than that you're Iron Man. I spoke. I then patted Tony gently on his shoulder. Good talk. Then before he could retort I got up and returned to the party venue, where I enjoyed myself the rest of the night, mingling, eating, drinking, and even dancing with both Susan and Jessica. Thus I ended the night on a good note. But then the next day I was all business again. Sitting within my personal office within the embassy I was having a conference call with Zora, Lucia, Zima, Natasha, and all of my primarches, explaining to them all the events that transpired the previous night at the Future Foundation's grand opening party. A bounty? Who cares commit such an act against our king? Katma asked. I don't know but I am going to find out. Natasha spoke. Thank you Natasha, I said to her. But we must remember the bounty on my head is not out only immediately concern. I said. Wakanda. After last night's incident I have no doubt they will ramp up their efforts on regards to us. I'll make sure the borders are entirely locked down. Zora spoke. Excellent Zora, I told her. I then turned my attention to Zima. Zima, it's time for us to move in on both Chloe and Eric Stevens. I told him. Yes, my emperor. The man replied. All right then. Anything else of importance we need to discuss before this meeting ends? I spoke. Emperor. Thanks to Atuma information we now have the exact location of Atlantis and have already entered preliminary steps in regards to the Underwear Nation. Katma informed us. Good. I replied. Anything else? I asked. When I did no one spoke up. So with that I adjourned this meeting. I spoke. I then ended the conference call. After I did I immediately mentally prepared myself for my next meeting. Because there can be no room for error once it begins. One mistake could cost me dearly. I kid you not. As I finished my mental preparations I heard a knock on my office door. Come in, I said. When I did Jessica opened the door and admitted the individual I was about to have my next meeting with. Reed Richards. For the time has finally come for me to enact my plan and save the world from this man. A task Doom will most certainly not fail at. Victor. Reed said to me. Reed. I replied. The man stepping into the room as I did. Once he did Jessica closed the door behind him, leaving us truly alone. Meaning everything starts now. Chapter 77, Chapter 74, Eliminating Reed Richards. Third person, POV. After Victor and Reed exchanged greetings they continued simply staring at each other for several seconds. Until Victor sat down on his chair. Please, have a seat. He spoke, gesturing to the two chairs situated in front of his desk. Why thank you, Reed replied. He then moved to sit in one of the chairs in front of Victor's desk. So, I must admit I was a bit surprised when you requested I meet with you today last night at the party. Reed spoke. Well, I had matters I wished to urgently discuss with you. One's better done in private. And I wanted to do it sooner rather than later. Hence the request I made to you last night. By the way, thanks for agreeing to it. No problem, Reed replied. So, what matters do you wish to discuss with me? He asked. First off, it's about me and Susan. Victor spoke. Reed resisting the urge to scowl, and Ingor the slight tightening on his chest, as Victor brought up the two of them. What about you two? Reed asked. In regards to how you found out about our new relationship status. I'm sorry. Victor spoke. Surprising Reed. You're sorry? Reed asked. Victor gently nodding his head. I am. For I already thought Susan had informed the rest of you in the fore about it. And then when I saw yours and the others' reactions the other day when I kissed her I knew she hadn't. A matter we had a long chat about afterwards. Why? Reed asked. Because I know of the history between you and Susan Reed and I didn't want you to be blindsided, like you were, by the fact that she and I are now a couple. Victor spoke. Since I consider you a colleague and more importantly a friend, he said, putting a fake smile on his face, while on the inside Victor was evilly laughing his ass off. Since most of what he is saying to Reed is S-grade bullshit right now, but looking into Reed's eyes Victor can see he is believing him. Good. Victor thought. Everything is proceeding as planned. Victor the First, thank you. What you just said means a lot. Reed spoke, putting a small smile on his face. You're welcome. Victor replied. Now then, on to the second matter I asked you here today to discuss. Reaching for his keyboard Victor typed on it for a moment. He then turned his monitor to face Reed. The second after this happened Reed looked at Victor's computer screen, where several windows displaying designs and schematics had been opened. After taking a moment to review said designs and schematics Reed returned his gaze to Victor. Victor, is this what I think it is? If you mean the beginnings of what I hope to be the world's first fully functional teleportation device, then yes Reed, it is what you think it is. Victor replied. And I want your help on the project. So, what do you say? I'd be delighted to. Reed immediately replied. Excellent. Victor said. Once he and Reed began delving into matters concerning the teleportation project. All the while Doom was still laughing evilly on the inside, since both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of his Richard's extermination plan had gone off without a hitch. Now all that was left was to execute Phase 3, the final phase, which would end with Reed Richards meeting the Grim Reaper from Family Guy, June 13, 2008. Smiles on their faces Victor and Reed stood in the latter's personal lab within the Baxter building, right in front of their newly completed teleportation machine, which, if it functioned correctly, was another invention that could revolutionize the world. Beautiful isn't it Victor? Reed asked. Yes, it truly is. Victor replied. Though we still need to make sure it works. Otherwise it'll just mean we've spent the past week simply creating a paperweight. Don't worry Victor. We've both done the math. We know it works. Now the only question remains is who gets to use it first. I think that honor should go to you Reed. Victor spoke. Really? Reed asked. Yes. Victor replied. After all, we built this device in your personal lab, and I think that should mean something. So go on and get in there so I can send you to a beach in Hawaii. He spoke. All right then. Reed spoke. He then walked forward and stepped into the teleportation machine. Meanwhile Victor headed over to the machine control terminal, dropping the smile from his face. Brainiac. Phase 3 of the Richards extermination is about to enter its final phase. Victor spoke to Brainiac. Using his technopathy. Understood Emperor. Everything is in place, just as you requested. Brainiac spoke. When he did Victor smiled and then stopped speaking with him. Just as he did Reed closed the door to the teleportation machine. Once this happened Victor began controlling the machine using the terminal. As it powered up Reed couldn't hide his excitement. He had a smile on his face. One which quickly began to fade as the seconds went by, since Reed still had not teleported. But that doesn't make any sense. Reed thought. During this past week he and Victor had run hundreds of simulations to see how the chamber would react organic matter, all of which came back in the green. This telling Reed something else was going on. Upon realizing this he got ready to try and signal Victor, only for the man in question to walk up to the machine himself, his hands folded behind his back. Oh good Victor. Hey, you need to turn off the machine and get me out of it. Something has gone horribly wrong. Reed quickly explained, only for Victor not to move an inch. Victor, what is wrong with you? I said we have a problem here. Reed spoke again. Problem? I see no problem. Victor retorted. Yes, there is. Reed said. Now seriously, turn off the machine and pull me out. I'm starting to feel strange. He said. Reed feeling like his body was being pulled in several directions at once. Ah yes, that would be the teleportation machine pulling your body apart at the atomic level. Victor casually spoke. What? Reed shouted. If that's the case, then Victor, you need to get me out of here. Now. No Richards, that will not be happening. Victor replied. He then put a triumphant look on his face. For that machine shall be your final resting place. He spoke. Wano, don't tell me. Reed spoke. Yes, it is as you're thinking. I made the teleportation machine act in its current manner *. Victor spoke. When he did Reed got a furious expression on his face and began pounding on the door to the machine. You bastard. When I get out of here I'll kill you, you hear me? I'll fucking kill you Victor. You woman-stealing bastard. Ah, and so we come to the heart of the matter. Susan. Victor said. The lovely woman you took for granted Richards. Who is now mine. A choice she herself made. And then you have the gall to obsess over her and think that she belongs to you. Pathetic and disgusting. But then, you always were. Yucked to her. Reed snarled. A bit of spit flying out of his mouth in the process. So, you are finally releasing your true nature. That of a rabid animal. Good. Fitting you should do so in your last moments in life. Victor spoke. Oh, and don't worry about Ben, Johnny, and of course Susan. I will take excellent care of them. Now then, Richards, goodbye. I could say it was a pleasure knowing you, but then I would be lying, he said. Then with that Victor walked away, Reed glaring at him the entire time, all while trying to escape the teleportation chamber before it finished what Victor had set it to do. But no matter what, Reed couldn't figure a way out of the chamber. Even his powers were useless. But of course they were, since Victor had accounted for them. As such, Reed was truly helpless as his body was pulled apart. Eventually Reed began screaming in agony, falling to his knees as the pain inside of his body got worse and worse, until eventually Reed Richards disintegrated into nothing but his atoms, leaving not a single trace of his body behind. Taking note of this, Victor smiled, for he had just eliminated one of the most annoying gnats buzzing around him, making it a glorious day. Chapter 78, Chapter 75, A Dynasty Begins. Doom, POV. As I saw that Reed Richards was well and truly gone, I savored the moment. I then stopped for a second and used both the technological and magical means at my disposal to make sure for certain there was no chance of Reed having survived. Since, as I have said numerous times before, this is a Marvel universe, where shit can creep up on when you least expect it. Even when you accept it, you still might end up fucked. Hence my actions at the moment. After a few minutes I stopped checking, since all the results I got came back the same. Negative. I couldn't find any single trace of Reed Richards anywhere, cementing his death as a permanent fact. When I was absolutely sure of this, I raised my hands in the air and waved them like I just didn't care. That is until Herbie began floating towards me, a glass of red wine in his grasp. Seeing him, I stopped my actions. As he reached me, Herbie handed me the glass of wine. An excellent accomplishment, my emperor. Here is a drink to celebrate. The little robot told me, since he, like all other technology within the Baxter building, from the security systems to all the devices in Richard's lab, are under my control. Since when I inserted Brainiac into the F4 systems, during what I am now calling the Blastar incident, I wasn't just having him feeding me information from their computers and spying on the 4. I also tasked him with slowly hacking everything in the building and turning it to the side of doom. All in preparation for this day. Why, thank you, Herbie, I said. I then accepted the glass and drank from it, savoring the taste of the wine as it traveled down my throat, eventually finishing it. Once I did, I handed the glass back to Herbie and walked over to one of the many terminals in the lab. Since there was still one more thing I needed to do to make sure none of the remaining F4 ever discovered I was responsible for Reed's death. Blow myself up. Third person, POV. Leaning her head against the window of the SUV she was in, Susan was lost in her thoughts. Are you okay, Miss Susan? That is until Chris Roth called out of her. Since she was currently with the boy, along with her brother Johnny, Victor had asked the two of them to take him out and show him New York today while he and Reed finished working on some big project they had been collaborating on for the past week. A request neither Johnny or Susan had any problem fulfilling. So they took the boy out, where Christoph had a marvelous time. Though now they were heading back towards the Baxter building. Yes, I'm fine, Susan replied, though truthfully she wasn't, for there was something she needed to urgently discuss with Victor in regards to their relationship. Gee sis, you're a bad liar, ow, Johnny shouted, as his face was pushed forward into the back of the seat in front of him, courtesy of one of Sisnan force fields. Johnny, maybe for once you could learn to keep your mouth shut, Susan spoke. Yeah, whatever, Johnny replied, picking himself up and seating back in his seat. Just as the SUV they were in pulled up to the Baxter building. Boom, only for Small's explosion to go off just as they did. Hearing this, Susan, Johnny, and Christoph all jumped out of the car and turned their gazes in the direction the smoke created by the explosion was coming from. The same with their security detail. Seeing that the explosion came from Reed's lab, Susan didn't hesitate. She created a force field disc under her feet and started flying upward. Flame on. Johnny flaming on and doing the same thing. In no time at all, the pair of siblings reached the lab and found a big hole in the side of it. Looking inside, they saw much of the lab had been destroyed. Victor, Reed, Susan shouted out. Susan, Victor replied. Hearing him, Susan manuaged herself into the lab, Johnny following right behind her. The two of them getting inside, just as Victor threw a destroyed computer terminal off his body, his clothes in tatters. Landing in front of him, Susan ran up to hug him. Victor, I'm so glad you're okay. Thank you, Susan, Victor replied, wrapping his arms around Susan and reciprocating her hug. So, what happened here? Johnny asked. After he landed. Once he did, Susan and Victor parted from their hug. Something was wrong with the machine Reed and I were working on. We're not sure what, but all of a sudden energy just started to build up and we both knew it was going to cause a devastating chain reaction that would take out possibly half of New York. We did all we could to stop it, but nothing worked. Then Reed found a solution, which he then tried all on his own, sacrificing himself in the process, Victor explained. Johnny and Susan get looks of horror on their faces as Victor's words. No, Victor, you can't mean. Susan trailed off. I do. And I'm sorry to say, but Reed is dead. Victor spoke. No, that can't be true. It just can't. Johnny exclaimed. But it is. Victor said. And once more, I am truly sorry. I tried to stop Reed. I tried to save him. But I just wasn't able to, and for that you have my deepest apologies. He spoke. Which of course was a load of shit. But if anyone checked any remaining security footage, our data from any of the machines left in the lab, it would fully support Victor's story. Just as he planned. since there was no one left around to say otherwise. Susan and Johnny had been out with Kristoff, while Ben had taken the day to visit Alicia, Victor having made sure he and Reed were the only two ones in the lab at the time of the accident. So with this his murder of Reed Richards was complete. What are we going to tell Ben? Johnny asked. The big guy's going to be devastated. If you wish I can tell him. Victor spoke up. I think it's only right, considering I'm the one who failed to save his best friend. No Victor, don't blame yourself. Susan suddenly spoke up. You did everything you could. I know you did, because you're a kind and caring man, she said. Thank you Susan, Victor said. He then wrapped Susan in his arms and pulled her into another hug, though this time when they hugged Susan whispered quite the revelation into Victor's ear. I'm pregnant, she said. Victor suddenly learning he was about to become a father again, a prospect he found terrifying, but also found himself loving, since this was the first step to starting the Dynasty of Doom. Chapter 79, Chapter 76, Progress on multiple fronts. Doom, POV. Pregnant. Susan is pregnant. With my children. The moment she whispered this to me I focused all my senses on her body, sensing more than just her own life force, but the faintest traces of not just one but two others, telling me I'm about to have twins, who are most likely going to be Franklin and Valeria, but instead of being known as Richards they shall be known as Dooms. Truly, this is wonderful. On another note I'm glad I eliminated Reed when I did, for I knew if that man found out Susan was having my babies he would have instantly turned into the maker right then and there. No question. But now that possibility will never come to pass, for I have eliminated that threat permanently. Breaking my hug with Susan once more I then pulled her into a quick kiss, before placing one of my hands on her stomach and gently beginning to rub it. Susan, this is wonderful news. I spoke. What are you guys talking about? Johnny asked, walking up to Susan and I. The fact you're about to become an Uncle Jonathan, I told Johnny. When I did his eyes went to where my hand was on Susan, before going to his sister's face and widening in shock and realization. Sue, are you pregnant? I am. Susan replied. Sis, that's great. Johnny happily said. I can't wait to let Ben and Reed he began, only to stop when he remembered Reed was now dead. That's right. Reed is, sorry. I just forgot for a moment there when I heard the good news. Johnny told us. Johnny, it's all right, you have nothing to apologize for, I said. Victor is right Johnny. Even I would have done the same if I were in your situation. Susan spoke. Thanks you guys, Johnny said. Then just as he did the broken doors of the lab were forced opened by a Dumbit. After they were Kristoff entered it, his security detail following behind him. Father, are you okay? Kristoff asked me. I'm fine, I said. Though unfortunately the same cannot be said for Dr. Richards. I spoke. For he sacrificed himself not only to save my life, but countless others. He did. Kristoff questioned. Yes, he did. Including the life of your new siblings. I told him. For you see, Ms. Storm is pregnant. I revealed. Kristoff, and his security detail, becoming extremely happy when I revealed the news of Sue's pregnant status to them. Wait, siblings? What do you mean Victor? Susan questioned. We're having twins my dear. I can sense it. I informed her, wondering how the twins will turn out, given that Richards is their father in this reality no longer. Will Franklin still end up a reality warper? Will Valeria develop any powers? Will the twins even still be a boy and a girl? These and numerous other questions are now swirling in my mind in relation to them. But there is one thing I have no doubt about. No matter how these twins I'm about to have turn out I will love them with all my heart. That is a promise Doom will never break. June 20th, 2008. A smile on my face I watched Susan as she slept soundly in bed next to me. A thing she had been doing for the past week, ever since the death of Richards took place a week ago. Speaking of which quite a few things have happened since then. First, Ben Grimm has been informed of Reed's death. To say he took it hard was an understatement. Grimm was filled with so much anguish upon learning of the death of his best friend it's a wonder he didn't fall into a deep depression. Though I guess I have Alicia and the rest of the four to thank for that. The three of them have been there for Ben, who although is not still back up to his old self is getting there. Second, everything that was salvageable from Reed's lab was, which when examined cemented the story I fed to everyone else. So as far as anyone was concerned Reed Richards died a hero's death. That is the very last favor I will ever do for that man. Third, we held a small memorial service for Reed. Fourth, I helped Ben and the others become the new owners Baxter Building, since it seemed Reed never made any arrangements in regards to ownership of the building in the event of his untimely demise. Upon learning this I couldn't let it stand. So I put my lawyers to work on it, all of them resolving the matter of ownership of the Baxter Building easily. So now Ben, Johnny, and Susan are all co-owners of it, though I don't think they'll be spending much time there in the near future. Given the fifth piece of information I have to share, the remaking members of the F4 have agreed to come back to Latveria with me when I return this time around. I knew Susan would, given her new pregnant status and all, but I also extended an invitation to Johnny and Ben, along with Alicia Masters. I also offered to fund the three of them in the future should they want to continue their exploration/hero activities, but they haven't made a decision in regards to that matter yet, which is fine. I'm not rushing them. Moving on. I continued watching Susan sleep until I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. When I did I gently got out of up, threw on my green silk robe, and went to the door and slightly opened it, finding Jessica standing outside. Yes, Jessica. I asked her. Sir, Director Fury is on the line for you, Jessica informed me. Understood. Give me 5 minutes, I said. Jessica nodded at my words. Once she did, I closed my bedroom door. I then quickly got dressed before leaving my bedroom and heading to my office, where I took Nick Fury off hold and answered his call. Hello Nicholas, how may I help you today? I asked him. Your offer. I've decided to accept it. Nick said. Excellent. I replied. I'll be in touch, I said. Though before we end this little conversation of ours I have to ask, what made you decide to accept my offer? I weighed the pros and cons of it and decided the former outweighed the latter. Fury spoke to me, though I knew that wasn't the only reason he accepted my offer to assist S.H.I.E.L.D. No, it's definitely so he can make an attempt to keep tabs on me and my people. It's cute. But since that's Fury job I won't fault him for it. Besides, now I can become the antidote that cures S.H.I.E.L.D. of its long festering Hydra infection. So, yay. Time to hunt some tentacle bastards. I see. I replied. Alright then. Call you later. I spoke. I then ended the call with Fury. Once I did, Brainiac suddenly spoke up. Good morning my Emperor. Morning Brainiac. I replied. I have news for you. First off, Ms. Romanoff has managed to identify the one who placed the bounty on your head, and although she wished to inform you of this news herself I told her I should. Since she also discovered the price on your head has been increased. Your bounty is now 25 million. And the person who put it on your head is known as Nathaniel Essex, which you have informed me also goes by the name Mr. Sinister. Brainiac explained to me. I see. I replied. Thank you for informing me of this. I spoke. Of course Emperor. Brainiac said. He then ended the call. Once he did I started making plans to initiate a full-scale hunt for Sinister and his people, since it seems that fucker really wants to die, so I'll be more than happy to grant his wish. Chapter 80, Chapter 77, X-Mansion. To think, Sinister would put a bounty on my head. Looks like I've been too lenient with that old, clone fetish having, man. Well, time to rectify that situation immediately. Though before I could start crafting my Sinister extermination plans in earnest I got another call on my office phone, which I answered. Yes, hello, I asked. It is me, sir. Jessica spoke. A Charles Xavier is calling for you, she said. Put him through. I replied. Of course. Jessica replied. She then put Charles Xavier through. Hello, King Doom. Charles said. Yes, I am here Professor Xavier. I replied. So, why the sudden phone calls? I have an answer as to the proposal you made me and my X-Men. He revealed, making my already good day even better. But I would like to give it to you in person. My school, if that is all right. Perfectly Professor. I replied. Let's have our people talk and make the arrangements. I said. Understood. Xavier replied. We then ended our call. After we did I went back to getting ready to make sure Sinister ended up fucked up the ass without any Vaseline. Though knowing that freak might like it. I guess we'll see. I worked on my plans for Sinister for a bit more, before handling some other matters that needed my attention. Then once I was done I left my office. But not before making a couple plans for my visit to the Great X Mansion. Westchester County, North Salem, New York. June 22, 2008. As the SUV I was in drove past the opened black iron gates, I focused all my attention ahead, simply taking in the fabled and legendary X-Mansion. Insert image of X-Mansion here. The home of the X-Men, and the place that basically gets destroyed every other week. Though from the way the mansion is currently looking it seems I'm visiting on one of the good weeks. My SUV coming to a stop outside of the mansion front door I stepped out of it, finding Charles and Logan, standing there and waiting for me, along with a teenage Jean Grey, the current host of one of the most powerful entities in the entire universe, the Phoenix Force. As I glanced at the young girl I found it a bit hard to believe how much power and potential she possessed. On the other hand her looks were already shaping up to make her a real knockout in a few years. And seeing Jean in the flesh I can now understand why so many men, especially those related to the X-Men, ended up simping for her. Even I saw her from the Rule 34 perspective in my previous life, along with many other female Marvel characters I have met since coming to this world, which I am not ashamed to admit, especially since none of them will ever find out I have done this. Ah, King Doom, welcome. Charles said to me. Thank you, Professor Xavier. I said to him. Logan. I said to the man, who only gave me a brief nod of acknowledgement. But that was all I needed. Once this happened I turned my attention to Jean. Oh, and who might this lovely young lady be? I asked her. I'm Jean Grey, sir. I mean, Your Highness. Jean said, nervousness lacing her voice. Well Jean Grey, it's nice to meet you, I told her. Jean here is one of my first students. Xavier told me. A powerful telepath and telekinetic. Oh, so you're a powerful young lady then. I said. Good to know. I spoke. Thank you, Jean replied, a blush appearing on her face, making her look even cuter. But that's all she is in my eyes, since I don't ever go near jailbait. After all I am a proud MILF, as well as a lifetime member of the Church of Thessie. The phrase, Thessie thighs save lives, being one of the mottos I live by. So I'm not even thinking of trying to seduce Jean Grey, though I wouldn't mind having a chance work her clone, Madeline Pryor. Seriously, the creators really knew what they were doing when they made her character on X-Men 97. A goth MILF. It was one of my dreams come true, so if Scott wasn't going to say her name I gladly would have. Moving on. After we exchanged pleasantries, Xavier started giving me a tour of the mansion and its ground, where I saw numerous children of varying ages, all of them with varying superhuman abilities. Though other than Jean I didn't see any other recognizable member of the X-Men, or member of the mutant community from Marvel, that I could recall. Eventually the tour ended, Xavier doing so near a tree by the lake on the grounds. So, what do you think of my school? It's a wonderful place, Charles. I spoke truly. Thank you, King Victor. Those words mean a lot coming from a man such as yourself, who seems to be doing more for Matsari. I mean EVO kind than I currently am. Charles spoke. Don't beat yourself up. I mean you've been fighting this battle for years, decades, without giving up. It takes a lot of will to do that, especially in the world we live in. I spoke. I appreciate your vote of confidence, truly, but as I just said I am not doing enough, which is why I want to take you up on your offer and work with you. Charles spoke. I see, I replied. Thank you, Charles, you won't regret this. I promise. I told him. No, I don't think I will, he said. The two of us then shook hands. After that we then chatted for a bit more. Then man even showed me the mansion's underground facilities, including Hank's lab, where we had another stimulating conversation. Though before we both got into deep I stopped it. I then did a few more things before bidding Charles, his X-Men, and the X-Mansion farewell. As my SUV headed back towards New York City I took out my phone and made a call to Jessica. Yes, my Emperor, she asked. The moment she picked up, Charles Xavier and his X-Men have agreed to work with us. So let's move forward with the plans INV-. I didn't get to say another word, since all of a sudden two individuals suddenly appeared on the road right in front of the SUV, one of them punching down on the front end, sending the SUV up into the air and flipping. The second after this happened I summoned my armor to me. I then freed myself from my annoying seat belts, after which I kicked out one of the vehicle's rear doors and then dragged my two bodyguards out of the SUV from there, all three of us safely landing on the ground, just as the SUV hit it and began rolling, becoming a mangled mess. Brainiac, I am under assault. Send backup to my location immediately. I called to him, using my suit's communication system which I found someone was trying to jam. Trying and failing. Understood, my Emperor. Reinforcements will arrive shortly, Brainiac replied. As he did, the four Doombots I always had following me from the skies landed beside me and the two bodyguards, both of whom are Spartans. Can you both stand? I asked them. Yes, we can, Emperor. They both answered in unison. Good. I replied to them. Stay with the Doombots, they will protect you, while I deal with those foolish enough to attack me, I said. My two bodyguards nodded. Once they did I focused all my attention on the ones who just fucked up so badly they just didn't know it yet. When I did I saw two people I recognized. Blockbuster and Vanisher. Insert image of Blockbuster here. Insert image of Vanisher here. Then before I could even make a move against them I found myself surrounded on all sides. In back of me were Arclight and Harpoon. Insert image of Arclight here. Insert image of Harpoon here. To my right I found Ares and Hans. Insert image of Ares here. Insert image of Hans here. While to my left I found Vertigo and Greycrow aiming two very large guns at me. Insert image of Vertigo here. Insert image of Greycrow here. Seeing all of them here I knew this was Sinister doing. Since all of these people are part of the Marauders. One of the two groups Sinister treats as his bitches, the other being the Nasty Boys, who are probably with Sinister giving him his final blowjob as I speak. Since after today he will not have a single moment of peace, for he has just summoned the full might of Dr. Doom against him. The fool has no idea what he's just done, but soon, he most definitely will.